Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parent Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the greatest entitled parent stories we read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled parents you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that if this video gets 1,000 likes, she won't try to speak to anyone's manager for an entire week. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. And become an official member of the Re-Army today, and I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming video. r/Entitled Parents. Entitled Mom steals my self-started college fund for sister's birthday. So, while growing up, I found myself having a horde of entitled parents, step and otherwise. My mom was great most times, but still felt entitled to my stuff as I was her kid. On to the story. When I was a kid, after my twin brother got diagnosed with cancer, I became obsessed with saving money for my future. I figured if only one of us got to have one, I'd have to make it awesome enough for the both of us. He's in remission for 10 years next month, but at the time, I didn't know he'd live. This meant on every holiday, I found myself saving all the money I got because I was going to Harvard. I was going to have an awesome career and zero student debt. I'd also mow lawns, weed gardens, as well as tutor and babysit kids when I got old enough. At the point this story happened, I had a happy $10K saved up. Not enough for all of college, but only $3,000 less than my total loans for college. I was also not allowed a bank account because of my age, and no one wanted on one with me. This meant I had roughly $10,000 in $100 bills. I'd trade smaller bills with my mom in my closet in a shoebox. My mom had my sister when I was 14, and she was born very early, 27 weeks, and spent most of her first year in and out of hospitals. So my mom has dedicated her life to making my sister's life the best it can be. One day, shortly after my sister was born, my mom asked if she could borrow some money, as they would be short on rent that month due to my mom and stepdad being at the hospital so much and having their savings depleted. I made her promise to pay me back and handed her $500 from the box and told her to put it back in said box when she was to pay me back. I checked 2 months later and she had paid me back. Cool. Then my sister's birthday rolled around. It was an amazing feat that she had made it to 1 year. My mom was ready to have a huge party. She rented out an entire aquarium because my little sister loved Ariel. She got my sister a custom-made dress that looked like Ariel's pink one from the movie. Huge cake from the best local bakery, tower of presents, the whole 9 yards. Near the end of the party, she announced that she had taken notes from my thrifty saving and had started my sister a high-interest savings account with $1,000 at the moment, so when she turned 18, she'd be set. She also informed family members that any money she received as a gift today would go there. We weren't wealthy by any means, so I figured that my stepdad's parents, wealthy, old money, had paid for all of this. I was 15 at the time this happened, and with a permit from school, I was able to get a part-time job. I went to put my first check in my shoebox, and I had noticed it only had 1 envelope in it versus the 10 I had. I opened it up, expecting to count $1,000, but it was only $374, showing whoever took it had the foresight to put back what they didn't use. I had an absolute panic attack, like fell to the ground screaming and hyperventilating. Crying, unable to speak, panic. That's when my brother came in. He wasn't sure what to do, so he got my mom. She got down on my level and soothed me to where I was able to communicate anything. She asked what happened, and here's the exchange roughly. We've got entitled mom, we've got me, we've got my twin brother. Entitled mom. Now, what happened? Everyone is all right? Are you okay? Me. Robbed! We got robbed! What do you mean, honey? I started crying again and I said, I only have $300. I noticed my mom became slightly less comforting and her tone became slightly nervous. Entitled mom. $300? Did you take it? She was referring to my brother. Brother. No, why would I steal from OP? I didn't even know she had money. Well, OP, I'm sure you lost it. No 15-year-old needs $10,000 anyways. We'll get you a bank account. That way, this won't happen again. Me. I didn't lose it. Well, you must have thrown it away then or something. That's when it suddenly clicked. How my sister had such an awesome party. Me. Mom, please, Please tell me that you didn't take it for sister's birthday. My mom got defensive and started talking like, and this is the best way to describe it, a guilty Danganronpa character during the rhythm minigame. Mom: I would never. What would I even use it for? Your sister has had a hard life. You would be lucky if that's where your money went. You even got the money from us. Only part of it, but whatever. I remember distinctly putting $500 in your stupid box. Brother: oh my God, Mom's a thief. I'm not the thief. I've given everything so you kids can have the best lives. I was at the hospital every night with you. I shaved your head when your hair started falling out. This continued and would be a lot of typing, but you get the gist. Me: Mom, you gave me that money because you guys didn't have rent. Twin brother: that's messed. Twin brother, out. This is between OP and I, woman to woman. She pushed my brother out and locked the door behind him. Entitled Mom: sweetie, one day when you become a mom, you'll understand that you'd do anything for your kids. When God gives you 2 sick kids who get better, you want to celebrate them. Don't you want your sister to have a good time? Doesn't she deserve to go to college one day? You're so smart and strong. You don't need help like the other two. You'll probably get a full ride anyway. I was in tears and too shaken up to talk. I just sobbed in the fetal position. She continued to talk at me for a while, but I don't remember much other than waking up there for school the next day with my comforter on me and twin brother sleeping in my bed with his blanket and pillow. I never got any money back, but after buying a small safe with that paycheck instead, saved up more and worked 2 jobs when I was 16 so I could have money. I ended up with about $5,000 after having to pay for my own car and insurance to get to and from work and a few other things. Have any of you guys ever had your parents take something that belonged to you? And what would you do if you were in this situation? Please let us know. She did nothing wrong. If it belongs to my kids, it belongs to me. Karen didn't like my answers to her questions, even though I was relentlessly honest. I'm telling you about one event, but I must have a retail face because I'm approached so often. I wear a suit at work. When I call in at any shop on the way home, I leave my jacket in the car, so I'm just wearing a shirt and a tie. I couldn't tell you how many times people assume I am staff. If they're civil, I'm civil. If they're struggling, I'm helpful. If they're rude, I have fun. The reason I remember this one is because I've said all of these things separately before, but this was the first time I got them all squeezed into one single interaction. It just went so perfectly. It will never happen again. I had called into a large supermarket to pick up birthday candles. I first saw the woman being very rude to another customer for no apparent reason. She was just impatient, and the other customer just wasn't moving fast enough for her liking, so she was insulting her. Let's call her Karen. As she turned, I saw the missile lock in her eyes as she spotted me. She galumped over my way. I decided to enjoy it and settled on being deadpan literal as a plan. I looked away. Karen: excuse me? Me: why? What have I done? What? She paused for a second, looking like a dog that had been shown a card trick, then angrily asked, can you help me? Me: I couldn't possibly know. I don't know what you want. Where do you keep your eyelash curlers? Me: I don't keep them anywhere. Yes, you do. I've seen them before. I'm certain I don't. I've never owned any. My eyelashes manage to bend all on their own. I'm more than happy with the bendiness of my eyelashes. Huh? What? No, idiot. I mean the shop. Where in the shop are the eyelash curlers? I haven't got a clue. Why not? I refer you to my previous answer. I never use them. Karen: ah! Are you trying to be stupid? Me: no, it's effortless. This is insane. Are you going to find out where the eyelash curlers are? Or would you prefer that I speak to your manager? Me: I'd say neither. But if I had to choose, I'd go for option B. What? You want me to speak to your manager? No. She shakes her head in an angry confusion and says, you just said you did. Me: no, I didn't. You asked me which I'd prefer. If I was offered a rectal exam or a slap in the face, I don't want either, but I'd prefer the second to the first. See how it works? She stood in silence for a few seconds with her mouth open and the deepest frown. She then built up to a shout with, this is ridiculous. Me: I completely agree. Where is your manager? I'm not exactly sure, but my guess would be at home with his family. Ah! You're being stupid! Who supervises you here in this store right now? She actually stamped her foot twice when she shouted, right now. Me. Nobody. What? Why not? Me. Because I don't need to be supervised. I haven't needed supervision in a shop since I was about 9 years old. Oh my god, it's like talking to the wall. I could see that her shouting had attracted a member of management. She was approaching quickly. Karen. Why aren't you helping me? Me. Why would I? I think I saw a slight hint of understanding spread across her puzzled face. You do work here, don't you? No. Why didn't you say so? You didn't ask me, until now. The manager arrived just as Karen shouted into my face. You're a moron! Manager to Karen. Madam, please lower your voice and stop talking like that. There are kids in the store. Manager to me. What's happening, sir? Me. I'm not really sure. This lady was being rude to another customer, then she approached me and started to interrogate me about my personal grooming habits. She wasn't happy with my answers and started to shout at me. Karen. No, that's not true. I was shouting because I thought he worked here. Manager. Whether he was an employee or not, you can't talk like that. You can't treat customers or staff like this. We do not tolerate it. It's not my fault he's an idiot. If he had... She was interrupted by the manager. Please stop shouting. The manager pressed transmit on her radio and said, Security, urgent, code 4, aisle 14. Manager to me. Are you okay, sir? Yes, I'm fine. I just needed birthday candles. Could you tell me where they are? Karen. What the heck is going on? Manager to Karen. Stop shouting. If I have to warn you again, you will have to leave the store. Manager to me. They're on aisle 22. Me. Okay, thank you. I started to walk away. Meanwhile, Karen was still shouting. 2 security staff turned the corner and passed me on their way to Karen. I could hear her shouting for another 30 seconds. The next time I saw Karen, I was standing at the self-checkout. She was being followed out of the store by security staff. She was complaining into her phone, loudly but unclearly, about the shop, the staff, and some moron, as she left empty-handed. Do you think that moron was me? I was wishing so hard for her to look left and see me, but she didn't. If she had shouted at me, regardless of what she said, I was going to raise my little box of candles and say, yes, thanks, I found them. The whole thing was so funny, I almost broke and nearly started laughing when she stamped her foot in time with, right now. I've been mistaken for staff dozens of times, but I've never had it go so perfectly. Probably never will. Don't expect a sequel. Have any of you ever played a trick on a Karen? And if you haven't, would you if you had the chance? Please let us know. I'll be the one playing the tricks around here. Oh, come on. Won't be taught by a girl. So he got fired. So, I used to work for my grandparents on an oil farm in Texas. I was 17, freshly graduated from high school, and had moved from the Midwest to Texas to live with my grandparents and work on the oil farm they worked for, doing some easy data entry. The building was essentially a 10 building on the job site where my grandma and I, the only 2 office workers besides my grandfather, who was the foreman, worked. Basically, when the new hires would come in that had missed the initial hiring round, I was the one that would make sure all their paperwork was in order and that they had all of their OSHA classes finished. And if any safety training hadn't been done, I would just put in the VHS tape and confirm on a written copy that they had finished it under my instruction. This went on for 2 months and with no issues until one fateful day, a regular Florida man, record and all, came in as a new hire and came to my office to finish his new hire paperwork. Once he was in my office, I found he had no safety training to speak of, and I informed him his next day or 2 would be spent in my office watching safety videos. All of this was paid, of course. He immediately flew into a rage, screaming about how he wouldn't have some girl teaching him how to do his job, which again, I was a 17-year-old female. At the time, I now identify as non-binary, and was only going through company standards and OSHA rules with him. I went to my grandfather, who was my boss at the time, obviously very confused and uncomfortable and unsure of how I should proceed. To which my grandfather said, "You want to fire him?" Cue my excitement. My grandfather follows me to my office, and I, as a 17-year-old, get to fire this grown man sitting in front of me. I start directing him to gather his things and leave, and he starts up a huge fit, yelling at me before he noticed my grandfather standing in the door with his gun holstered on his hip. My grandfather usually kept this locked in his safe on the ground or in his truck. I hadn't realized until after he had pulled it out just for me, and very quietly then he got up and left. The most satisfying moment of my life. Have you ever had someone mistreat you like this? And if so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. I get mistreated by cashiers everywhere I go, so I talk to the managers. Entitled mother wanted my €1,500 PC build for her son. So basically, I am a 20-year-old percussionist, and I'm getting myself into digital music. I'm just a newbie, but I wanted to try it out. I had the possibility of buying myself a rather high-end gaming PC since I've worked a bit and I had some money to spare. I'm also a bit of a gamer. Big lie, I'm a total gamer. So I decided to mix digital music and gaming and build a machine that could help me with both. Now, here's where the choosing beggar comes in. I live in a condo where my neighbors are a family of 3 with a kid who's around 10 or 11. I've talked with them quite a lot, and I've helped their son choose his first personal computer 2 years ago. But since now Warzone came out, his PC wasn't good enough and he needed a new one. His mother, the choosing beggar, knew that I was building a computer and decided to knock on my door this morning. Here's the conversation. Hey, I was just looking for you. You're building a new computer, are you? Me. Yes. Why? Oh, my kid says that his isn't enough, and I was wondering if you could help him out. Me. Great, I can suggest some parts and help him build one. Just tell me what's the budget. Notice that I wouldn't ask for money since he's just a kid and our families are in good terms. Choosing beggar. Oh, here's the problem. There's no budget. Me. I can spend how much I want on his configuration? No, I was thinking that you should just give him the one you have now. You're too old for games anyway, aren't you? I was still building the computer at this time, and I couldn't believe what words had just left her mouth. Me. Why should I? I'm building this PC for myself, with my money. Here's where a lot of Redditors helped me in my last post, and my social anxiety didn't kick in. Me again. I will not give your kid anything. Choosing beggar. But why? You're in university now. You don't have time to play games. Me. You don't know how much free time I have, and that's none of your business. Oh, come on. You're an adult now. Adults don't play video games. Adults do play video games. And again, what I do with my free time is none of your business. You know you're never going to get a girlfriend like this. Girls don't go after men who play video games. Me. Are you for real? Her tone was strangely kind at this moment, and it just made me angrier. Of course. Just give it to kid. He's still a kid and he needs it. Me. Good afternoon, choosing beggar. At this point, I was so angry that I wanted to punch this jerk in the face, but I just slammed my front door shut and walked back to building my PC. Basically, this lady just wanted me to give my €1,500 PC to her kid because I'm an adult and I need a girlfriend. I mean, I am single right now, but I firmly believe that gaming is not the cause of that. I want to thank the Redditors that commented on my last post here, the one about entitled mom wanting my drum set, the words about my social anxiety, and on how to act in certain situations really helped me out this time, and I was able to react in a more calm and collected way, even though I was angry as heck. Really, thank you. Speaking of video games, do you like video games? And if so, what's your favorite video game of all time? We would love to hear from you. My son loves Fortnite, and he plays it on his Nintendo Switch. How to deal with a rude Karen like a pro. One thing you need to know is I have some severe anxiety issues, but this story happened maybe 6 or 7 years ago, before I developed the problem, so I was a bit more brazen back then. Anyway, I was shopping at this big blue store famous for their selection of Karens when I passed by this sweet little old lady. She asked me to grab a case of soda off of the top shelf. This is nothing new because I'm 6'6", and people ask me to do a lot of stuff like this. I also live life by the golden rule you are taught as a kid. Treat those how you want to be treated. I got the soda for the sweet old lady and asked her if she needed any more help. She declined and thanked me, so I started to walk away to grab the other things on my list. As I was walking down the aisle, looking at my list, trying to decide where I should head to next, I heard 2 words shouted at presumably me. You boy! I look up and see this abomination of a Karen sneering at me. She had the classic haircut, probably weighed more than me, as an already overweight, super tall giant. in leopard print leggings and a shirt that she was probably 3 sizes too big for. She had only said 2 words to me, and I already didn't like her. Remember how I said I live by the golden rule? Well, that works both ways, and since she was rude out of the gate, that must mean she wants to be treated rudely also. I just wasn't exactly sure how to be rude to her yet. "Get that soda off the top shelf for me, now! I'm in a hurry," she said to me while her volume was turned up to 11. So I said, "I don't work here. If you want me to help you, I'm gonna need to hear a please first." She shrieked, "Obviously you work here. I just saw you help that other jerk." Wow, just wow. Now she insulted that sweet old lady after being rude to me. Then I decided what I would do, based entirely off of what would be the funniest thing to do. "Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Which soda did you want again?" She pointed aggressively at a case of Fresca on the very top shelf. I grabbed the case off the shelf and went to hand it to her. She muttered, "Finally." Right before she grabbed it from me, I quickly put it back on the top shelf, and without looking at her, just slowly walked away to do the rest of my shopping. She shrieked a bit about finding my manager and getting me fired, but I was just giggling to myself. I ended up taking my sweet time shopping, hoping she would show up with a manager, just so she would embarrass herself more, but I never saw her again. I wonder how her family reacted to hearing the story of the rude idiot Walmart employee she encountered that day. Speaking of soda, what's your favorite soda of all time? Please let us know. I could really go for a Diet Dr. Thunder right now. Temp Principal demands me to shave my beard. Has it backfire on him? It's high school, and all us kids are returning from our 2-week off vacation. Sure enough, we have an assembly in the PE building. We all go in, and I look to the front to see the vice principal and our main attraction of this story. From here on out, I will refer to him as Professor. Why, you may ask? Well, to put it lightly, if he didn't fit the stereotypical arrogant, smug, glasses down nose, uptight professor from a high-end school, then I don't know what is. Even his own stance had this "I am so much smarter than all of you combined" matter. As all us kids find a place to sit, the vice principal gets our attention. He lets us know that Professor will be our temporary principal for 3 months while our own principal would be away, so we should welcome him to our school. Then it was the professor's turn. He even spoke down to us. "Thank you, Vice Principal. While I am new to this school, I am from this other school. As I expect nothing but the best from them, I expect the same from you." In case anyone is wondering, the school he came from has one of the worst reputations in our region. So why he walked around like he won all the Nobel Prizes was beyond me. We were shortly dismissed. Fast forward to lunchtime, and I am in my usual hangout area with my friends. I should point out that I had a well-trimmed beard at the time. I'll explain later why this is important, as I am just chatting away when I see Professor walking towards us. I see him and thought, you know, I should welcome him. So that's what I did. Me. "Hi, Professor." "Professor." "Have a shave." He didn't even look at me. It wasn't even a request. It was an order. A sharp, bitter order. He just kept on walking like he owned the place while I just stood there, shocked, knowing in that moment that I was going to be in a world of hurt with him. The next day, my name gets called over the loudspeaker to go to the front office. Sure enough, I do. There, I get ushered to the principal's office, where Professor is standing there. He just points to his seat, and I sit down. As I do, he starts. "You will shave!" Again, in that sharp, bitter order tone. No? "You will shave!" Knee, in a jerk way. "No." Professor slamming his hands on the table. "I told you to shave, so you will have a shave!" That's still a no. Professor collecting his stance, but still firm. "It's against school policy to have any kind of facial hair, so you will shave." I smile like the Cheshire Cat. Now, I promised you why I had a beard And in this short intermission, we'll show why I was smiling. You see, this was my one real time I was ever rebellious in my school years, and that I didn't know the school policy apart the basics. This little line was used on me, prior of him, by the vice principal and a fellow teacher. What I responded with was the same I gave to Professor and to the vice principal prior. Prove it. Show me where it says in the school policy that no one can have any facial hair. When you do, I will gladly shave mine off, and I expect that you will enforce the policy on yourself. He had a beard also. The other male teachers, and some of the ladies too. Oh, I can be a jerk when I choose to be, or want to, or just in general. Professor quickly backpedaling in his statement. The policy is for students. Me, still being a smarty. It's school policy, Professor. Therefore, the teachers must also follow it too. Professor is glaring at me, rage in his eyes, clearly never been spoken to by a student. If you do not shave, you will get detention. I smiled yet again. Why? The school I went to was in a small town, surrounded by other small towns. I lived in one said small town that was a 30-minute drive away. My only way to and from is one of the school buses. My mother, before I even started high school, told me that if I got detention, she by no means would pick me up. I took that to heart. Me looking at the phone. You want to dial, or shall I? Professor looked, taking back slightly, but quickly got back to his normal self and got my mother's number. The two talk as I am just watching his face go from determination to confusion to anger to confusion again and then defeat. He hangs up. Turning to me, furious, he knows I know full well what my mother said to him. Then he gets an idea. You won't get detention, but for the next week, you will get in-school detention. I was confused, as I never heard of such a thing. So I asked him what it was. He told me that next week, this was on a Friday, the start of second period, recess, third and fourth period, I would be placed into detention where he expected me to do my schoolwork. I look at him, noticing the obvious flaw in his so-called genius plan. He was punishing me by giving me free time. Professor smugly. Now, I will give you 3 days if you shave. So, what do you say? I stand up. I'll see you next week, Professor. Monday comes, and sure enough, I go to my in-school detention, which was just in a small room next to the front office and the principal's office that was used for parent and teacher meetings. I go in and spend my time just doodling on the whiteboard as I came to realize that I wasn't being supervised during my whole time in there. Tuesday, I didn't even bring any of my schoolwork, just some drawing books and my Game Boy. As I sat in the front office waiting area, 2 students see me. Student 1. Hey, OP, what are you doing here? Oh, I got in-school detention. In-school detention? I then explained what it was, which both of them just laughed by how sheer stupid it was. Wednesday and I have 2 new inmates. Who are they? Student 1 and Student 2. Thursday, we had 2 more. By Friday, there were 7 of us. After my time was up, I get called to the principal's office again, and there's Professor, all smug-like. So, did we learn our lesson? Me, with the most straightest of faces. Nope. Professor, now furious. Get out! I shrugged and left. Needless to say, he didn't bother me after that. My little story went wild through the school, as more and more kids were getting in-school detention because of him. He soon stopped doing it after a month because the students that were getting it, to what I can recall, was in their double digits. I was glad when he left. So here I am, in my 30s, and yes, I still have a beard. Now if you like this, do let me know. And if you want to hear more, I got 2 more stories. Mr. Grumpy and the Legend. the myth and the horror of the Red Dragon. Hey Karen, can you read us our newest review we just got on iTunes? Certainly. Tinkerbell Sammy says, "You make it so I can enjoy Reddit while having dyslexia. I have dyslexia along with some medical issues, so it's great to be able to listen to all the really good Reddit stories. It's also nice when I am drawing or playing on my Switch, so I can listen and play at the same time. I listen to you all the time on YouTube, and now I can listen to you better on the go with the podcast." Thanks, Tinkerbell Sammy. We hope you continue to enjoy the Mr. Reddit podcast, available on Spotify and iTunes. Christian, holier than thou, entitled Mom tries to manipulate me. I gave her a taste of her own medicine. This story happened earlier this week. To preface this, ever since the lockdown started, my church has been having meetings online via live stream. This has extended to small groups, which are now done through Zoom meetings. This particular week was much like the others in terms of small groups, Bible talk, cracking jokes, and discussing pop culture. However, joining us this week was my friend's aunt from out of town, the entitled mom of the story, who, from what I heard, had a tendency to have a holier-than-thou demeanor. At one point of the chat, we got to the topic of hobbies. I took the moment to discuss my hobby of gaming, my big mistake of the story. I talked about my gaming collection of different gaming consoles: Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube, PlayStations 1, 2, 3, Wii, Switch, Game Boy Color, and games that I've collected over the years, which my friends found to be fascinating. So, on to the story. Cast. We've got me. We've got entitled Mom, my friend's aunt, and we've got my friend. So, about 40 minutes after small group, I get a phone call from my friend's phone number. I picked it up, only to be greeted by his aunt, entitled Mom. "Hello, OP." Me. "Entitled Mom, what a surprise." "Well, I'm calling you from friend's phone because I wanted to talk to you about something." Me. "Okay, what do you want to talk about?" "During small group, you mentioned that you had a collection of video games and video game systems." Me. "Yeah, what about them?" "Well, you see, it's just that strong Christian men like you shouldn't be wasting time playing video games. You should be dedicating your time towards getting married, starting a family, and teaching them the ways of God and the Bible." Me, dumbfounded. "Wait, what?" Entitled Mom. "Remember, the Bible tells men to put away childish things, and video games are definitely under that category." Me, disgusted. "So what are you suggesting I do with my collection then?" Entitled Mom. "You should donate it to a child in need. Better yet, my son loves video games, and his birthday is coming up, so you should give it to him. I'm sure he'd be grateful." Me, starting to get real angry. "Well, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable doing that." Entitled Mom. "I will tell you what. I'm in town till Wednesday. I'll call you back tomorrow. This gives you plenty of time to pray about it. Hopefully God convicts you to man up and put your childish things away. Good night now." Hangs up. I sat there for a good 15 minutes with anger stewing in mind over the audacity of this entitled mom. I wanted to call her back and curse her out until a light bulb went off in my head. At the moment, an evil Grinch grin had crept across my face. My mind had just formulated a perfect response to entitled mom's request. The next day, I spent the day waiting for friend's aunt to call me. In the evening, the moment came. I saw my friend's number ringing on my phone, and the evil Grinch grin came back to my face. Me. "Why, hello, entitled mom. How are you today?" "I'm doing well. Have you thought about our conversation from yesterday?" Me. "Why, yes, I have." Entitled Mom. "What did you decide?" Me, in my best, jolly, holier-than-thou, Joel Osteen voice. "Well, I prayed long and hard about what you said, and I spent some time reading the Bible." Entitled Mom. "And?" Me. "Well, growing boys are very pivotal to the future of the kingdom of God, and building a relationship with Jesus is very important to their upbringing. In all honesty, video games are just going to be a distraction to him, and time spent playing them is better dedicated to learning about the Bible." "But that's..." "Remember, entitled Mom, the book of Proverbs tells us to start children off on the way they should go, and Ephesians tells us to bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. So, unfortunately, I will have to pass on gifting your son my gaming collection. However, I will gladly send you a children's study Bible and a DVD collection of VeggieTales to friend, and he can send them to you. Entitled Mom. But wait, it's not going to be an issue. Me, cutting her off, but still in my jolly holier-than-thou voice. I'm sorry, Entitled Mom, but I have an important dinner arrangement to go to. Goodbye now. Hangs up. I turned off my phone after that to make sure that the Entitled Mom couldn't call me back. Later on that night, friend sent me a message on Facebook apologizing for his aunt's behavior. Apparently, she took his phone behind his back to make both calls, and he got really upset when he found out about what Entitled Mom was asking of me. But at the end of the day, I still have my collection and my hobby. Mario Kart, anyone? Speaking of video games, what systems do you like to play? Or do you stick to PC? Please let us know your favorite console of all time. My son just loves the Nintendo Switch, and I love stealing them from people. I want the original price worth of value. The other day, I had a couple of middle-aged women that came in for a return, claiming their phone screen protector was defective and that they had purchased it earlier that day. They installed it themselves, but there's a strange adhesive that's dried and fixed to the plastic. Definitely not their fault. It's a cheaper protector marked down from $40 to $10 on clearance. Not a big deal. It's an easy replacement. Sure, I say. It's defective. We'll return or exchange it for you. Thank you, Woman A replies. Are we able to swap it for one of the $40 ones? We can get you one of those. So I select the appropriate glass protector and ring it at the till. $30 plus taxes is the difference. No, that's wrong, she decrees. That's not what I'm paying, is it? That's correct. $40 minus $10 equals $30. That's how much you owe. Woman A. But the one I purchased is regularly priced at $40. You should give me that value for the protector back. Me. Did you pay $40 for the screen protector? Well, no. But that one, she points to the defective plastic discarded to the side of the till, isn't any good, and I want the value of it back. You're getting the value of it back. We can swap it for the same one if you'd like, and we can verify that it's in working condition, hoping to provide a solution. But it's met with an indignant, no, there's no way to check if the plastic is damaged before you unpeel it. Otherwise, I would have seen it beforehand. Let's check. And so I open the case, and voila, the plastic is perfectly intact. Okay, so you're going to install it for me on my phone? Sure, it's a $15 charge for us to install it. We're happy to do it for you. But it's $0 for me because I'm such a great customer. She was, in fact, not a great customer. Nope, I can swap the protector or I can refund you the money. I want to speak to your manager. Sure, I'm the senior employee in our electronics department. What do you want to speak about? The management for this department won't be in until tomorrow. The management on duty are from different areas, and they will tell you the same thing. I can offer you a refund for your screen case or exchange of the value you paid, but I'm not giving you $55 worth of product for free when you've only spent $10 here. Is there a store manager I can talk to? Let me call over Miss Manager. She's management. After a minute, Miss Manager comes over to speak with the customer. Woman A. Hi, you're the manager. This man has been presenting himself as management, and he is refusing to help me. I wanted to exchange this phone screen, and he's not giving me the value of it back. Miss Manager. Well, he knows more about this than I do. What did you say? I repeat the same thing I've been saying for the last 5 minutes. We can refund you your money, or you can put the $10 towards a different screen protector. Miss Manager. That sounds reasonable to me. Which option would you like? Woman A. This is unbelievable. Your other locations don't treat me this poorly. I want the value of my case. It's $40. Me. We're offering you the value back. You paid $10, you get $10. Just because it's on clearance doesn't mean you get the original price back. Woman B. Come on, let's just take our business to the other store. They at least know how customer service works. Woman A agrees, and the pair leave, without returning their screen protector they had spent 20 minutes arguing about. Me. Okay, have a nice day. Do you think they should have let her do the exchange? A lot of places actually will, just to get rid of the problematic customer. But what do you think? Please let us know. Of course they should have. She deserved it. My dad says he'll pick me up at dark. Well, he hasn't picked me up, so it must not be dark. This happened about 10 years ago now, and I have a good chuckle about it every time I pass the place in my car. I'm a pretty meek guy, so this is probably the only rebellious thing I did in my entire teenage life. My dad owns a farm, and being his son, this meant that I had a job when I was a kid, whether I liked it or not. Mostly I understood this, but that didn't mean I had to like it. I resented having to spend my entire days of summer vacation dawn to dusk in a tractor when it came time to harvest alfalfa, which we did about 4 times between spring and fall. Basically, imagine a teenager with ADHD forced to sit in one place for 14 hours, and you'll understand how it felt. Honestly, if I wasn't a total introvert, I might have snapped sooner. So anyway, it's the second day of harvest. I've spent about 20 hours in total in a haybine by this point over the past few days, and I ask my dad which fields to cut next, and I ask him when I'll be done, hoping, in vain, that I can leave and go play video games or whatever. This is where the titular line comes in. "I'll pick you up at dark." Little does he know that my little teenage heart is clenching with righteous anger for all this wasted, paid time. So several hours pass, and I'm understandably getting pretty irritable. It starts getting dark, and guess what? No sign of my dad. At the time, it was becoming a bit of a recurring joke in my family about how my dad was always late, so I knew I was in for the long haul. Then it occurred to me, and the malicious compliance begins. My dad said he'd pick me up at dark, and he wasn't picking me up. So that must mean that it wasn't dark yet. And what don't you need if it's not dark outside? That's right, headlights. So I continue going back and forth on this wide, empty field, squinting as the light continues to fade after sunset, and stubbornly refuse to turn on the headlights. I can easily see the edges of the field, of course, but everything else is blending in pretty well. I start purposely and accidentally leaving some shark fins, which is what we call the mistakes that hay bean operators leave between rows when they don't get any alfalfa. A few small shark fins per field are fine, even expected, but these are on a whole new level. My dad shows up after around 30 minutes of total darkness. I forget our exact conversation, but I do remember the result. After asking me why I didn't turn on the lights, and me telling him why, he laughed uproariously, and I still remember it fondly to this day. I never did get any punishment. I'm not even sure he understood the extent of the missed alfalfa. It was dark after all, and it was hard to see in the dim moonlight. But whatever, it was just a few rows. I, however, like to think he was a little proud of me, because I was the type of teenager who never got into mischief. I asked him about it recently, and unfortunately, he has no memory of the incident. Oh well. I, however, will probably remember this little bit of malicious compliance fondly for the rest of my life. It might have been pretty insignificant and motivated by laziness, but it was also the first time I really stood up for myself against an authority figure. Have any of you guys ever lived on a farm? And if not, would you like to? Please let us know. I need to have neighbors close by so that I can use them when I need stuff. No, I am not staff, and no, you can't crash my dad's wedding. About a year ago, my dad was getting married. As it was his second wedding, he did not want it to be a huge event, and neither did his fiancée. Thus, they decided to have their wedding with just 17 guests at the bookstore where they met. Aw, it was cute, and I wanted to throw up. He asked me and my sisters to guide the other guests to the room where the ceremony would be held since we were there early to set up. The bookstore was something of a maze, as bookstores often are. My dad's wedding was being held on the second floor, so my sisters and I were stationed at various places on the first floor leading to the stairs, which were hidden in a little corner in the back. My sisters and I were dressed up, but not wearing name tags or aprons like the people who actually worked at the bookstore. That did not stop a parade of people stopping by and asking where to find certain books. I don't know what it was about my appearance in particular, but most customers came to me instead of my sisters. I get that I was standing in a particular spot and that I could have looked like I was there to answer questions, but the staff were busy shelving books, dusting, making coffee, and generally being busy, so I would have been a pretty lousy staff member just standing around like that. One customer in particular approached me and asked if I knew where the painting that used to hang in the store was now. I answered that I did not work here and was simply guiding guests to the room where my dad's wedding was to be held. The man looked incredulous and asked me several more questions about the painting, including who the artist was, where the medium was, the size of the painting, and what the subject was. After I answered that I did not know any of those things, he was satisfied that I did not in fact work at the bookstore. He then proceeded to say how much he loved weddings, no matter who was getting married. He asked where the wedding was being held and if he could go take a peek. I answered that that would be really weird, given that it's a private ceremony, and my dad would probably appreciate it if he didn't. He laughed it off and said, "Ah, well, I'll come by and crash the wedding later. I just love weddings so much." I practically begged him to not crash my dad's wedding, even just to watch, because there were so few guests that it would just be painfully awkward to have some random man smiling in the back. After a few moments of us going back and forth and him promising he'd be there whether we liked it or not, he finally agreed to leave the wedding alone. He stayed for a suspiciously long time in the bookstore, watching all the guests come in. He smiled ridiculously as my now stepmother walked in with her dress and headed upstairs, provoking her to ask me and my sisters, "Who is that creepy smiling guy standing around watching the entourage?" We responded, "He's just some guy who really likes weddings," and asked if he could crash yours. To our great relief, he did not show up at the ceremony, but the whole time I was worried about it. Sorry for being distracted during your wedding, Dad. Have you ever been to a wedding? And if so, did you like it? Please let us know. Oh, I just love crashing weddings, especially when the food is good. Must attend interview in person. I was working for a university in the UK as an admissions officer when I decided to apply for the role of senior admissions officer in the same office. I submitted my application and didn't hear anything for a while. A week or so later, I was abroad for a week to visit my family when I received an email to confirm that I got invited for an interview the next day at 9 a.m. I replied and asked if we could postpone the interview until Monday because I'd be back by then, but they refused. The lady who refused was my current manager, and she knew I was abroad, so I didn't think this was very fair. I asked if we could do the interview over Skype instead, but she also refused this. The interview time was set, and if I was interested, I would be there. Otherwise, it's my loss. I was ticked off, as I couldn't believe how inflexible they were. I started rereading the email again and decided to go through the attachments to see what I had to prepare for the interview. I noticed they added a travel expense form which stated that if you travel from 5 miles or further, you could claim your expenses. Being abroad in Europe is definitely over 5 miles, so I decided to drive to the airport, booked the last flight, which was £350 for a one-way flight, got a cab from the airport, and stayed in a hotel near the university as my house would have been at the other side of London. I made it to the interview in time, and they were shocked to see me, as they obviously didn't expect me. The interview went well, but I did not get the job. When I handed in my expense claim form, I was advised that it only applied to UK travel, and they refused to pay. I asked them why they sent me the claim form when they knew I was traveling in from abroad, and said that nowhere on the form did it state it was for the UK travel only. They said it was their policy, but I was not allowed to view said policy. I was due a lot of money, so I decided to file a Freedom of Information request for them to provide the policy. This appeared to be a historical policy, and as they could not send me the evidence, they decided to pay my travel expenses, which came to a total of over £550. The policy has been updated since. I don't work here, lady. I used to live here. 2 weeks ago, I was helping my dad install several new sets of doors to our old house. We moved into our new house just over 2 months ago, and we've been renovating our old house to rent out, rather than try to sell it due to current circumstances. We've basically completely redone the house aesthetically with new paint, new flooring, even some upgrades to make it more attractive and warrant a better price for it. We made the decision to rent our house through a property management company. The company basically acts as a middleman that handles any issues with the tenants, so my parents, who own the house, aren't acting as direct landlords. And since we were just about done cleaning up the house to make it attractive to potential tenants and that it passed inspection, our last-minute door change was approved by the agency. One of the employees from the company was offering tours to potential tenants they'd organized by appointment. It was around noon that the employee had just done the last of her rounds with potential tenants for the day, and she offered me a small stack of her personal cards so anyone who came through interested in our house could call her to arrange a tour. I took the stack of cards and put it in my pocket, promising I'd hand the cards to any potential tenants who expressed interest. About an hour or so passed, and I'd taken a break to have some lunch. I was sitting on the porch and looking out at the "For Rent" sign when a lady came trotting down the sidewalk. She looked at the sign and then looked up at me, the stocky Hispanic kid in jeans, a t-shirt and some Vans, and marched her way up the walkway to the house. Lady, Excuse me, are you doing tours of this rental? I'd like to see the inside. I stood up, brushing off one hand to dig through my jeans pocket and pull out the company lady's cards to peel one off for her. Me. The company actually just finished tours for the day, but they gave me these cards. Here's the lady managing the property. You can give her a call and set up a tour of the property. Lady. Can't you give me a tour? Me. I mean, I don't work for the company, so I can't give you any official tour. Better for you to call the company and set up an appointment. They're the professionals. Lady. You don't work for the company? Then what are you doing here? Me. Installing some new doors. The company told us it was okay, so we just... So you do work for the company? She said this as if she had just riddled out some great mystery. Me. Look, lady, I don't work for the company. My dad's the owner of this property, and he arranged with the company to handle the renting of this house. I'm helping him install new doors so the house that I grew up in can be more attractive to potential tenants. Now, if you want a tour, you can call the lady handling the renting of this house. Here's her card. Have a nice day. The lady just looked at the card, looked at me, and something must have clicked in her head because she just took the card and walked off. The rest of the afternoon went pretty smooth. I handed out about a dozen cards to other people who were interested in renting, and the lady handling our house called my dad to thank me once we got home. Speaking of house upgrades, what was the last upgrade you did to your house? We'd love to hear from you. We just got a beautiful piece for the living room that says live, laugh, love. One of my favorite sayings. Karen calls cops on Amazon driver. This just happened yesterday, and I am still trying to gather my thoughts. I was driving a route that was given to me when I came into a neighborhood where there were some cones on the road close to the curb to let other drivers know that kids were playing outside. These cones were the small regular orange ones with a light at the top of it to make them more noticeable. The kids were playing in the yard, and it was very big to run around in without running into the streets. They were nowhere close to the road at all. Despite what people have said about Amazon drivers, we usually do follow the rules since we have people at the warehouse, including Amazon, watching us. I was driving a little below the speed limit since I saw the cones on the road and wanted to be respectful. Apparently, this wasn't slow enough for the mother who was outside watching the kids. She decided to start walking to my van, and for her safety, I started slowing down so I didn't hurt her since she was getting closer to my van. As she is walking, she is yelling at me. Entitled Mom. Slow down. There are kids playing outside, and your reckless driving could hurt someone. Me. No, I was driving the speed limit. Plus, your kids are nowhere near the road. I can see your cones and know that the kids are playing. I don't care if they are in the road or not. You need to be more considerate of other people than yourself. This carried on for a few more minutes, me telling to her and her yelling to me. I didn't want to deal with her anymore, so I started driving off. She decided to get in front of my van in the middle of the road to stop me from driving. I yelled at her to move, and she put her hands on her hips to say, I'm not going anywhere. I didn't want to deal with this crazy lady anymore and needed to deliver more packages, so I turned my van to the left, and then she moved to the left. I turned my van to the right, and again, she turned to the right. At this point, I am a little past her driveway, so I started backing up and she started yelling at me more. I know your job is hard, but you need to listen to me. Me. Please just go away. You need to stop driving so fast. At this point, the father comes outside and tells the mother to calm down and stop yelling. As I am backing up, I barely touch one of the cones on the ground. The father starts yelling about how I destroyed his cones and how expensive they are, and tells me how I owe them money for the cone. I park my van, and the mother is extremely close to my van now. I open my door to look at the damage, and the mother jumps in front of my door and then starts crying that I hit her with my van. You hit me with your van. I can't believe you hit me. Entitled Father. I can't believe you just hit my wife. I'm calling the cops on you. You're not going anywhere. I get back in my van and call my dispatcher to let them know what was going on so I didn't get into trouble for being late to my next drop. Our deliveries are time-based, and we can get into trouble if we sit too long. The police arrive and they come up to me and ask about what happened. The father and mother jumps in first. Entitled Mom. This man was speeding down the road at a high rate, and I tried yelling at him to slow down. He almost hit one of my kids. Then he got mad at me telling him to slow down and reversed his van and destroyed our cones. Then he slammed his door into me, hurting me in the process. Entitled Father. I paid a lot of money for those cones, and this guy destroys them all because he got mad at my wife. The cones are to protect the kids from drivers like him. He needs to pay for my cones. Me. You both are lying. I was driving a very slow speed when the mother decided that I was going too fast and stopped me in the middle of the road. Then, when I tried to leave, I accidentally touched one of the cones, not even damaged, and the father started yelling at me and called you guys. As for hitting her, she jumped in front of my door as I opened it. I assumed to falsify her getting hit. The officers looked at the cones and see that there is no damage to it, and then went to the mother and told her, Police officer, you know it's illegal in the state of Texas to stop a moving vehicle in the middle of the road. You are not allowed to block any kind of traffic. If anyone has to pay anything, it will be you paying a ticket. I asked the police if I may go, and he said yes. I really don't like losing time and didn't want to be there longer than I needed to. I don't know what ended up happening to the mother or father, but I wish I could have remembered their address, just so I could put a little piece of paper on their door that reads, Ha ha. Entitled Parent has no courtesy. So the entitled parent of my story is the worst kind of them all. It's the kind you can't get away from because it's my own mother. Today we went over to my grand's apartment for lunch. A thing to note is that in my country, it's common to have maids, but my grandparents, and my family until recently, don't have any. This is important for later into the story. My grandmother is very active in the church, so there was an event today, and no one else wanted to go, so I went instead. Before heading to the event, I ordered a pizza for the family because no one wanted to cook. The event lasted for about 1.5 hours, mostly just waiting around for the priest to show up and chatting with my grandmother's friends. Once it finished, we packed up and headed back to her place. Since we took so long, everyone else ate already, and it was just me and her left eating at the table. After we finished, she was the only one cleaning. I tried to help, but she insisted I didn't. Meanwhile, my mom was sitting at the sofa, not moving. Mind you, they left a bit of a mess as well. Now, this is where the no maids comes into play. For a good 9 months, we only had a cleaning lady come on weekends. At first, I was the one cleaning the house and the dishes, and we would have the laundry done on the weekends. I soon got tired of this because my mom was a mess. It would come to a point where she would leave plates, cups, and utensils in the sink, bedside table, dining table, anywhere she could put them really, all unwashed for days, sometimes weeks. Her laundered clothes would be stacked on chairs and the side of her bed. She would never sweep her room or wipe any of the surfaces. She had dogs that just left and would let their poop accumulate in the backyard. Mind you, she would never walk the dogs at all, and one of them is a lab that was wildly untrained and out of control. She even bit my dog, but that's a story for another time. And these dogs managed to go from fat and fluffy to skinny little things because she forgot to feed them. Basically, she was operating as if we still had people to pick up after her. Whenever I would lecture her about it, she would say, "Those aren't mine. I didn't use those." Or when she couldn't use that excuse, "Don't worry, I'll get to it." We got into a huge argument because she didn't want to even look for new maids and stated, "Well, we can just clean the house ourselves." The point was, she couldn't even clean after herself. I realized that during the time we didn't have maids, she would spend more and more time at my grandmother's house. All those times my mother didn't come home while we were maidless, this is what she was doing to her. She was leaving her 65-year-old mom to clean by herself while she relaxed on the sofa watching TV. She basically had a free maid to cook and clean after her. This was probably going on for the longest time, and I couldn't fathom how someone could just leave their mother to do all the work. It was one thing to be lazy in your own home, but in someone else's? My grandmother afterwards started folding clothes, so I started helping her out. Meanwhile, my mom is still relaxing on the couch. When it got really late, like 12, my sister wanted to leave as she was the one driving. My mom took forever to get up. My sister got so upset she left. So what does my mom do? She then asks my gran for a glass of water when she was literally 5 steps away from the kitchen. After a while, I told my mom to hurry up because sister was waiting for her, and it looked to me like she was taking her sweet time. She then snapped with a, "Yeah, wait, my foot is wet." When she was done, she was still looking around, not caring about how long she was taking. When we finally left the condo 15 minutes later, we went down and had to walk and look for my sister a bit because she moved the car. When we got in, my mom threw my sister's bag out of her way so she could sit. My sister's laptop was in the backpack, and of course, my sister is mad and says, "What the heck? Don't throw my things. My laptop is in there. Hand me my laptop now." Mom is huffing and shoves the bag to my sister. My sis hadn't put the car on neutral, so I tell her to give it to me so I can check it while she drives. After I make sure it's okay, my mom asks for the laptop and she shoves it back into my sister's bag. She's still upset for no reason. I can tell because of the way the laptop thuds when it's tossed into the bag, and I can hear her zip the bag roughly. She doesn't even apologize and huffs and puffs in the back seat. I proceed to drown her out with rap music. This is the other entitled parent that I think receives little attention and exposure. The kind that believes they don't need to have basic courtesy because we're family. And when you live with someone, it's obvious you'll see them at their worst. Her words. It's the kind that chirps away at you every day with the small things they do because they can't empathize with anyone but themselves. Hey Karen, can you read us our new review we just got on iTunes?
Bubba says, "Very epic. The easiest way to browse Reddit twice at the same time. I rate Epic Gamer out of Karen."
Nice. Thanks, Bubba. We hope you continue to enjoy the Mr. Reddit podcast available on Spotify and iTunes. Give my son a backstage pass. Bit of backstory. I, 21 male, work for a private company that gets hired out to work load-ins and load-outs for gigs that happen around my city and sometimes further afield. Our main client is the arena in my city. We don't work directly for any of the venues we get hired by, and we also have strict rules when it comes to the performer whose gig we're working at. If we should meet the performer or a member of one of the bands, other than a polite greeting, we're not allowed to initiate a conversation unless they do it first. A speak when you're spoken to kind of rule. This will become relevant later. There's also 3 groups of people who work at these gigs. The stage crew, that's us, who will be wearing a hard hat, a high visibility vest, a random shirt, cargo trousers or cargo shorts, any colors, and steel-toe capped boots. The security guys, who wear a yellow jacket with the company's name on it, with black trousers and boots, and the arena staff, who wear a black polo shirt or hoodie with the name of the arena sewn on, and black trousers and boots. This is also relevant later. A bit of backstory on the entitled mom. She's a friend of my mother's, maybe in her late 40s or early 50s. She has a son who's maybe 15 or 16. I had never really spoken to her before this point, other than a polite greeting if we bump into her at a supermarket. Her and my mother will talk for ages if this happens, and she seemed nice enough. My mother is also the humble brag type of person. She'll brag about my sister's accomplishments and my accomplishments to anyone who will give her the time of day. For example, the other day I found out I had passed my college course and will be heading down to a different city for university later this year. As soon as I told my mother, she was straight on the phone to various friends to tell them. She's far from entitled though. So, before the lockdown restrictions, a band who is fairly popular, especially with the younger people, played a gig at our arena, and I got the call to work at the gig. The day before the gig, my mother got a phone call from entitled mom. I was in my room doing whatever, and my mother knocks on the door and says, "OP, it's entitled mom. She wants to talk to you." She hands me the phone and goes back downstairs. Me, "Hello?" Entitled mom.
"Hi, OP. Your mother tells me you work at the arena now."
Me, "Sort of. I work for a private company that the arena hires to set up shows and tear them down."
"Cool. Will you be working at the concert tomorrow?"
Me, "Yup." Entitled mom.
"Cool. Kid will be attending the show with his dad.
Would you be able to get him backstage afterwards? He'd love to meet the band. Quick side note here. The arena doesn't do backstage passes, and they don't let the public backstage after gigs. Some bands will offer VIP upgrades to their tickets where you get to meet the band before the gig and sometimes some other cool stuff as well. Not every band does these though. They're also usually quite expensive. I got a VIP upgrade for a gig for my mother for my birthday last year, which included an exclusive soundcheck performance, Q&A with the band, photo opportunity, and a couple of other things. This was £75 on top of the £35 ticket. Me. We don't work directly with the band. Usually we don't even get to meet the artists we work with. Have you checked to see if the band are doing VIP upgrades?
I don't think they are. Plus, it'd probably be really expensive. The ticket price was bad enough.
Me. Fair point. Sorry, I don't think I can help you. I don't think the arena does backstage passes and don't normally let members of the public backstage. Entitled Mom is clearly annoyed by this.
Okay. Can you ask around tomorrow at the load-in shift?
Me. Nope. The arena probably won't budge unless your kid is really ill or in a wheelchair.
How dare you speak to me like that? Hand me back to your mother.
I go back downstairs and hand the phone to my mother. Entitled Mom tells her that I was rude to her and refused to get her son backstage. My mother told her that she'd deal with me and hung up the phone. She then told me that Entitled Mom threatened to come down to the arena and give me a piece of her mind. She then told me to not worry. She knew I wouldn't be as rude to her as she was making out and that she probably wouldn't follow through on her threat. The next evening, I arrived at the arena with a couple of my colleagues at 9:30 p.m., about half an hour before our call time. Our call time is usually half an hour before the show finishes, to give our boss time to make sure everyone who said they'd turn up has turned up, and so we can find out our role for the load time, lighting, stage, trucks, etc. Get our color-coded high-vis, which we occasionally get to keep and wear at future gigs, and our sub-crew manager, for whichever role we've been given, can explain the game plan for the shift. The security guys also don't let us in until our boss arrives with a list of who's working that shift. So, once we were suited and booted, we headed to the gate to wait for the boss, and I lit up a cigarette and scrolled through my phone. About 10 minutes before call, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Entitled Mom storming up the path of the side of the arena towards me. I put my phone in my pocket and prepared for the verbal storm I was about to endure. Entitled Mom.
OP, your mother said you'd get kid backstage after the gig. Hand me your pass.
She held out her hand expectantly. I don't have my pass yet. The boss hasn't turned up. Anyway, my pass is a work pass, so unless kid wants to work tearing down the show, it was a heck of a show to set up, so it'd be even more fun tearing it down. Sarcasm. My pass is worthless to you. I'm pretty sure he's too young to work it anyway. You have to be 18 to work for our company.
Surely you had a pass for the morning. Give me that.
Me. That was for the morning. It's expired now. Entitled Mom turns red. At this point, one of my colleagues notices the commotion and heads over. Colleague. Hey, OP, what's going on? Before I could get a word in, Entitled Mom yells in her face.
This boy said he could get my son backstage after the gig, and now he's refusing to let him in. Give me his pass.
Colleague. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not the boss. I don't have the passes. His pass is a work pass. We're not even allowed to speak to the band, let alone ask them for favors. Entitled Mom started yelling a blue streak at my colleague and then got the attention of the security guard. Security. What's going on here? Entitled Mom.
He said my son could get backstage to meet the band, and now he's saying no.
The security guard glances at Entitled Mom, then me, then Entitled Mom, and then me again, with a suspicious look on his face. Security. Is that true, sir? You know the rules in regards to this sort of thing. Me. No, I've repeatedly told her I can't get her backstage, even if I wanted to. Security. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Quite frankly, he's not my staff, and I don't care if he gets crap from people, but his boss definitely won't appreciate anyone harassing his employees like this. Entitled Mom.
I'm not leaving until my son can go backstage.
The security guard lifts up the walkie-talkie in his jacket as if he was about to summon more security to physically remove Entitled Mom. Before he could press a button, Entitled Mom gave off a massive and stormed off. As she was leaving, everyone else around started bawling with laughter, and she turned around and shot us a glare that could kill Thanos if looks could kill, and we all unanimously gave her the finger. That gave those of us that were there a good laugh and a bit of pre-work entertainment, and really boosted our morale for the entire shift. So thank you, Entitled Mom. Your entitled idiocy meant we went to work happy. Have any of you ever been to a concert? If so, what concert was it? We would love to hear from you.
Ariana Grande for the win.
Hero Manager takes revenge on terrible repeat customers. I waited tables back in the late 90s. Sunday was always busy right after lunch. This one couple was there every Sunday, sometimes just the two of them, but often with 5 to 10 others. They were very demanding, rude, and never left a tip. After drawing a huge zero on the tip line, they'd hand in the credit card receipt to the server and say,
"Sorry, we only tip God on Sundays. We tithe at church."
Their bills ran from $200 to $600. From that day on, servers refused to wait on them. Arguments ensued, and the manager finally agreed that he'd be the one to serve them. The customers thought he did this because they were special. These people drank a lot. Bellinis, margaritas, and daiquiris, fruity drinks you couldn't taste the booze in. 10 times out of 10, they'd complain that there was no alcohol in them and demand another shot. We said fine, but told them they had to pay for it. They'd argue, complain, moan, huff and puff, and finally relent. The kicker was that they wouldn't just accept the shots and shot glasses so they could add it themselves. They demanded the original drinks be taken back to the bartender because they wanted a professional to do it. The manager, ever so patient, would then collect all their glasses and haul them back to the bar. Meanwhile, they'd send their food back, berate any employees walking by because the room was too cold or too warm, toss trash in the center of the room, and then demand discounts for everything. One Sunday, I was at the bar waiting for drinks when the manager plunked down a tray with 6 daiquiris, all returned by that table. The printer rang out, as he had put in an order for shots to be added to them. Knowing the habit they had of returning their drinks, he had asked if they wanted an extra shot before putting the drink order in. They acted offended and accused him of trying to force them to spend money on something they may not need. So he went through the motions of bringing them out, having them taste it, and the eventual complaint that they were too good to have alcohol in them. The bartender reached for the tray of drinks, but he stopped her. He smiled, asked her about her day so far. She replied, and they BS'd for a minute. Then he picked up the tray and started walking back to the dining room. The bartender started to say something, but he said loudly, "Thanks so much," and kept walking. He delivered the daiquiris back to the table, where they all sucked on their straws and agreed it was much better. When the bill came, as usual, they didn't tip him a penny. At the end of the shift, the manager called for an impromptu meeting. We all converged in the bar area and watched as he went behind the counter and poured several shots of rum. He handed them out to us and then held his own up to toast. This shot is compliments of Table 44 today, their way of apologizing for treating you all so terribly. And that's how it worked every Sunday afterward. They came in, demanded more booze, paid for it, thought they got it, and then after we closed, the staff enjoyed a drink on their behalf. Those who didn't drink were comped a meal. Those horrible people were finally banned months later after throwing a plate of food on the floor because their fries were not crispy enough. We were glad to see them go, but also missed the mini happy hour that they had allowed us to enjoy. Have you ever sent anything back because it didn't taste right? If so, how did it go? Please let us know.
I do all the time. If I'm paying for it, I deserve something good.
I can't fix a fence I don't own. A few years ago, I was walking my dog past a rowboat club place where they do races and lessons. Sometimes for events, the parking lot gets pretty full, and it was one of those days. As I walked past the parking lot, an angry gentleman got my attention. Disgruntled rowboat boomer. "You really need to fix that fence. It's been like that for 6 months." He gestures to the fence between the rowing club and the house next door, which is broken and has fallen across part of the parking lot. Me, confused but trying to be sympathetic. "I'm sorry, I don't work here." Him. "I know that, but that's your fence, so you need to fix it. Listen, I know it broke because of all that heavy snow we got this winter, but it's been 6 months. It's taking up 2, maybe 3 parking spots." Me. "Oh, that's not my house either." He scowls in utter disbelief. "What do you mean, that's not your house?" Me. "I'm just walking my dog. I live half a mile away." Him. "I've seen you around there. It's not that hard. You pick up a phone book. You look up fence repair. It's absolutely ridiculous. Every time I come here, it's a giant pain in my butt to find parking." Me. That's really annoying, but I don't live there, so I can't help you. Him. Well, she's your neighbor then. Can't you tell her to fix her fence? Me. She's not really my neighbor. Like I said, I live half a mile away. But you talked to her. I saw you talk to her. This has been going on for 6 months, and nothing's changed. I realized he just wanted to yell at somebody, so I finally walked away. I wished I threw his phone book comment at him and told him he should look up any random person and yell at them instead. They have just as much to do with this as me. Yes, I am the temporary manager. Karens really don't believe you if you look young, huh? A bit about me so it's easier to understand the situation. About 1.5 years ago, I worked at a grocery store, one of many, and I got the job as a manager. Now, note, I wasn't a full manager. I was simply filling in till someone else comes in, as I did not have the full training for it. I had only worked at the store for 8 months, but was more than capable of doing a manager's job. Ordering, counting the money, closing up and opening, making sure everything is up to date. I was doing my job. I did, however, look young as I actually was. The store I worked in had many rude customers who would walk in looking to cause trouble as if God had sent them on a mission and said, "Go, my child, ruin some poor cashier's day." So, a day like any other. I'm in the dairy section looking for things that are going out of date. The only employees are 2 cashiers, 1 janitor, and me. I hear a commotion at the cash registers, but since my coworkers are way older than me, I figure they can handle the situation. Keyword, figure. I hear someone stamping towards me. It's like the gates of heck opened, and this absolute unit of a Karen marches towards me, her face filled with anger. She takes a look at me, turns around, and stomps back. What? I clearly have a little name badge which says OP, Manager. I heard commotion again, but I am on a tight schedule here, so I continue taking out all of the bad cheese. Not 1 minute later, I hear stomping again, and the most annoying, squeaky voice, she asks, "Are you the manager?" Me. Yes, how may I help you? Karen. No, you can't be the manager. You are an imposter. I know all the employees in this store, and you are not one. I don't know why she's screaming at me, but in a calm voice I say, "I am the temporary manager. Is there anything I can do for you?" She yells, "I demand the real manager. A kid like you cannot be one. Give me the real manager." I try to explain that I am one, but she keeps screaming like a pig. I tell her that she can call my boss. There's a number near the exit on the board, and she storms out. I hear her complaining about how I'm a liar and won't get the real manager out, how there's a kid at the store who is working illegally, how I'm incompetent and should be fired if I really work there. 10 minutes later, my boss pulls up, explains to the Karen that I am in fact a manager, and asks again how I could help. Turns out, she ate a whole 24-pack of sausages and only then noticed they were 3 days till the expiration date, not even expired, and demands a refund. She got kicked out. Speaking of groceries, where do you get your groceries from? Please let us know. I prefer Kroger myself. Wearing combat boots during nursing school. Back when I was in nursing school, we were supposed to wear black, non-porous, closed-toed footwear with non-skid soles for our clinical rotations that weren't Crocs. Most of my fellow female students wore classic nursing clogs like Dascos and Sanitas. I tried wearing clogs like this in the past and had rolled my ankles too many times to recall, so I decided to not go that route for shoes. I'm a military spouse, a vet myself, and have aforementioned messed up ankles, so my footwear of choice was a pair of black leather tactical combat boots. As a show of support, and to make sure I always looked sharp at clinical, my hubby always shined up and edge-dressed my boots every evening before clinical the next morning. The boots always looked professional. They were comfy as heck. I could bump my toes into beds without breaking a toe, and I could wear them all day without having back pain, foot pain, or rolling an ankle. The same could not be said for my classmates wearing more traditional shoes like clogs. During the first week of my first semester, I had an old school nurse as my clinical instructor. I say old school because she believed female nurses should still be wearing crisp white uniforms with that stupid starched hat, and that our profession lost prestige when we transitioned to scrubs. This instructor got such a bee in her bonnet about my boots and decided that my boots were out of regulation that she threatened to take it up with the director and have me tossed from clinical, thus failing the program. There was nothing in the handbook specifically stating I couldn't wear my boots since it just stated footwear, which was black, well-maintained, non-skid, and non-porous. Check, 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 check. Furthermore, the pair of boots that I wore were meant to be worn by EMTs, so they were waterproof, bloodborne pathogen resistant, puncture-proof, oil-proof, non-skid, and had reinforced toes. They were just as expensive as clogs and could handle a lot more. I knew I was in the clear, and so I decided to keep on wearing them. The day after the instructor commented on the inappropriateness of my boots, she did a uniform/shoe inspection to make sure we were appropriately attired. I, of course, was wearing my nicely polished combat boots. She failed me for the day based on my boots, so I politely objected, stating that my boots fell within the definitions of acceptable footwear in the handbook. She literally marched me to the director's office like I was a kid caught stealing cookies and demanded I get tossed out for the boots, failure to follow program rules, and disrespect because I objected to her failing me. The program director, upon further close reading of the program regs, determined that there was nothing that was wrong with the boots. They adhered to the standards set forth by the program and that they were honestly safer than most of the shoes the other students were wearing because they were waterproof, puncture-proof, non-skid, and had reinforced toes. She rescinded my fail and allowed me back in clinical. After that, I heard not a peep about my boots from any of the faculty the rest of the program. Fast forward to graduation. I had been wearing combat boots since I started and had no intention of stopping, especially since many of the vets that I cared for during clinical always reacted positively to them. Our nursing pinning ceremony, the event where we receive our nursing school pins and are officially recognized as nurses, has an all-white dress code, white uniforms, starched white hats, white closed-toed footwear. The word footwear is key. The dress code did not state shoes specifically, and I knew this. Same jerky old bat nurse sees me in the hall and makes it a point to tell me I'll have to get some real white nursing shoes to wear to pinning since I can't obviously wear my black combat boots because we needed to have white footwear. I politely smiled, nodded, said that I'd have white footwear, and went on my merry way. And then wore the all-white Doc Marten combat boots my infantryman husband bought me as a graduation gift to pinning. The instructor stopped me after the ceremony and complimented me on actually getting nursing shoes, at which point I pulled up the leg of my white scrubs and showed her my boots. The look on her face was priceless. Have any of you ever worn boots? And if so, did you like them? Please let us know.
I like those boots with the fur, apple bottom jeans.
The Angry Lady and the Check, the first attempt. At the time this story takes place, I was a young assistant manager of a clothing store in training to take over the store from the existing manager who was moving on to another store that was set to open soon. During my training, it was made clear to me that we could only accept checks, paper checks, that should give you an idea when this took place, that were drawn on a bank located in our state. We were forbidden from accepting starter checks, checks where you had to write in the name and address, as well as checks drawn on banks that were out of state, even if that bank also had branches in our state. Now, the first two were down to simple fraud, as there was, at the time, a thing where people would deposit the minimum amount to open an account, get the starter or write-in checks, and go on a spending spree. It'd take 3 or 4 days for the fraud to be found out, and by then, the person was long gone. The last one, the out-of-state thing though, well, that one was harder to explain. See, at the time, the state I was in had this law on the books that basically stated that if a person from out of state bounced a check, then that person would be charged with felony fraud charges, even if it was the first time, or just a simple mistake. Furthermore, any employee who accepted an out-of-state check, regardless of how long they had worked for the company, would be fired on the spot. So, on to the story. It's getting close to Christmas, and business is booming, even for our small store. It's apparent we're going to make well above what we had projected of making in sales based on past sales. I'm doing my thing in the men's department, working on selling a suit to a gentleman, when a call comes over the PA. Management to women's apparel for customer assistance? Okay, that's rare. Usually meant some customer was acting like a jerk to a cashier for something, but truth be known, that rarely happened. Usually the customer just came to track down any available manager. I pass my sale off to the clerk and head over in the direction of women's apparel. Dot, not her name, the women's department manager, is standing at the register with this lady who I'll call Princess due to how she was acting. Dot says something to the lady whose face is messed up, like she took a massive bite out of a salted lemon, and then heads my way. "Mr. Fox, we have something of a problem here," Dot says. "Gee, you think?" I find myself thinking as Dot explains. The lady in question had been shopping for Christmas gifts for her family and had pulled together close to $2,000 worth of various kinds of clothing, shoes, and cologne/perfume items. What's more, she had asked to pay with a check. "Ah, so you need me to verify it due to the amount?" I asked. That was another weird little thing with the store. Checks over $200 had to have management verification or approval to be used. It was more of a formality than anything, and we tended to just check the ID and then initial them before heading back to whatever we were doing. "Ah, no. Well, yes, but no. There's a problem," Dot says and hands me the check. I glance down at it and see it's drawn on a Florida bank and inhale sharply. I glance back at the lady who's giving me looks that could kill and back to Dot. "So, what do we do?" Dot asks. I shrug and tell her that I'll handle things and approach the lady who gives me one look of pure distaste before crossing her arms expectantly.
Well,
Princess asks and then points.
is my money good enough for you?
It takes everything in my body not to just say no and walk away. "Well, there's a problem with the check," I say, politely as I possibly can.
What do you mean there's a problem?
Princess practically yells. "Well, I hate to say this, but we can't accept this form of payment from you." I start. I don't finish it though, as Princess yells,
Why the heck not?
She then starts interrupting me every time I try to explain before I get a bit exasperated with her and say, "Would you please listen to me for a moment? I'm trying to explain the issue to you. It's not just a company policy, this is based on a state law." She looks ready to start in on another rant, and I take that pause as she draws in a breath to quickly explain. State law says that if I accept this and it fails to go through, regardless of if it's just a communication error, your bank's closed the day that they call for payment, or God forbid, it bounces, then a felony warrant for interstate fraud would be taken out on you, and you will be arrested and charged. The penalty for that being a fine of about $50,000 and a minimum of 5 years in state prison.
Well, my money's good.
She spits at me, figuratively, not literally. "Be that as it may, I can't accept this," I say, standing my ground.
Well, Wally World does,
she retorts. "They're able to instantly draw from the bank account. We don't have that system here. It doesn't hurt that they have stores in your home state, and we do not. Do you have any other method of paying?" I ask again, through mildly clenched teeth, as she's getting on my nerves at this point. Princess just points at the check.
That's it. So either take it, or I'll take my business elsewhere.
I'm done with her at this point and turn to Dot. "Go ahead and put that all in the back. We'll put it back on the shelves in the morning," I say, and hand her the check back. From the shocked look on her face, it's apparent she didn't expect me to actually stand my ground. Dot proceeds to grab up the items, doing as I instructed, while I hand Princess her check back. She just stands there, looking like a fish out of water for a bit, and then heads outside. I figure she's leaving. I was wrong. Probably 20 minutes pass when in comes a couple police officers. They head over to speak with Dot, who calls management back to her department. As I approach, I see that Princess is there, along with the officers. One of them approaches me and says that Princess had called back to report that I had stolen purchases she had made, taking them and putting them in the back after she had already paid for them. The officers wanted my side of the story, which I gave, within earshot of Princess. She ended up shooting herself in the foot about halfway through the officer talking to me as I was explaining the problem to him by screaming,
Tell him that he has to take my check. I want my purchases.
The officer promptly turns on her and asks her to repeat that, and she does, before he says, "I thought you said you had already bought them." She blinks, realizing her mistake, but the damage is done. The cops are simply done with her. They instruct her to leave, making it very clear that everything I had previously said about the check was true, if oversimplified. She, however, refuses to leave, doubling down on the idea that she would force us to take her check. At this point, it's close to closing. I've got work to do, and this lady is giving me a pounding headache. I want her out of the store, pure and simple, so I opt to try one more thing. I turn to the officer and say, "I don't want her in the store, and I don't want her ever coming back." The officer nods, understanding the wording here, and tells Princess in no uncertain terms that she's now trespassed from the store, and if she ever sets foot in again, she can and will be arrested. Princess eventually does leave, and the saga of dealing with her ends for about 6 months. It was a nice quiet time, right up to the point that her dour face once more darkened my store's doors. Speaking of checks, when was the last time you actually wrote a check? Please let us know.
Oh, I love writing checks, but especially bouncing them.
No, I don't need to see your bank statement. Hello, this occurred just yesterday in the midst of reopening. I am the manager on duty in this situation. Cashier calls me over because she has an angry customer wanting to return a $60 item and have 2 items price adjusted because after reopening, we took large discounts on most of the store. Her purchase was from before our company shut down. I approached with the intention of just giving her the few bucks difference, but realized I was walking into a stranger situation. Immediately, lady starts saying a previous manager had accused her of stealing in front of everyone and embarrassed her and said she needed a receipt to take the items back. I know there is no way in heck my sweet peer would have accused anyone. I noticed she has a photo of a receipt on her phone. She had come back in with a photo to try a second time. I felt happy I could resolve the situation and get her out. But no, doesn't end there. The photo only included the part of the receipt that showed a charge from her credit card. No date, transaction info, store location, etc. It was missing all the info I would need to pull up the transactions on my point of sale. Also, our point of sale does not allow a return to a credit card without this info. The software literally doesn't allow it, and there's no way to override. I explained to her that the info I need is missing and asked the lady if she had the bottom of the receipt. She said she doesn't have the receipt anymore, just the picture. How did she suddenly get this picture that she didn't have last time? I let her know I would be happy to give her a store credit for the item to return. She became more and more angry, saying that she had her bank statement and I need to put it back on her account. I apologized and explained that our point of sale won't allow me to do that, and there is no override. She demanded I call someone. I let her know that there is no one who can override it. I said I could attempt to look at my transactions for that day and see if I could pull it up for her, but our systems probably don't go back that far. As I leave to go do this, I hear my cashier ask if she doesn't mind stepping aside because there's literally a line to the back of my huge store and only 3 cashiers. People can't wait to shop after being cooped up, but staff is afraid to return. Crazy busy. Lady refuses and says,
"No, I will wait right here for her."
That's when I started getting upset at this lady. It's not everyone else's fault that you didn't keep your receipt. At this point, I actually believed there was some fraud going on. Like she may have already returned the items and just came in and found the item on the floor and was trying to return it again. Anyway, our systems did not go back that far. When I returned, she then demanded I call customer service right now for her because she has waited long enough. I let her know they were closed, but I would try in the morning. She then tried to leave the item with me so I could figure it out and then do a credit to her account so she wouldn't need to come in again. I then explained that we can't do remote refunds. The card needs to be physically inserted into our PIN pad. I dealt with her for almost 40 minutes with a huge line as we were closing. I even offered to let her cut the line next time. Just take your stupid store credit, keep your receipts, don't be so rude to hold up 150 other people. Don't accuse people of saying you stole. Don't call me a liar that I can't just refund your account. Where the heck did you get this photo if you don't have the receipt? Also, I noticed she hadn't even brought in the items she wanted price adjusted, but I got so caught up in trying to get her receipt info, I didn't even address it. Hey Karen, can you read us our new review we just got on iTunes?
Kitty Tinker says, "It's funny how stories that would usually make me anxious are delivered so calmly, I can actually relax and fall to sleep to them. Love the voices you do for the characters. Hope you're staying safe and sane. And thank you for my daily doses of Reddit."
Thanks, Kitty. We hope you continue to enjoy the Mr. Reddit podcast, available on Spotify and iTunes. Manipulative, power-hungry aunt torments my family for years. Costs her $300,000. Players. We've got myself, male, late 30s. We've got sister, who's 3 years younger. We've got aunt, older sister to my mother. We've got mother, single mom, adopted, no blood relation to my aunt. We've got cousins, 3 total, 1 male, 2 female. I have good relationships with them now, mostly. My estranged father, who had been living several countries over, is pretty much out of the picture by the time my parents got their divorce when I was 9. Due to financial hardship, we were forced to live with my aunt and the nightmare of a household we would soon find ourselves in. My aunt married into Georgia wealth, and you can figure out what that means on your own. She had 3 kids and eventually caught her husband having an affair. It's a huge scandal. She gets the house, the kids, and a fat payout from the family attorney. This is important because my aunt didn't do a darn thing in her life to earn her money, her house, her lifestyle, or basically anything. She was born poor along with my mom. Under her household, she was drunk with power. Years of therapy have allowed me to recognize that certain people, when in a position of power, get a perverse pleasure in ordering others to do their bidding. She was the strictest of authoritarians in every possible way you could imagine. Chores had to be completed by an exact specific time. Vacuuming by 3:45 p.m. Dishes by 3:55 p.m. Laundry days for my mother and us kids were Tuesdays and Thursdays, 5:35 p.m. to 7:55 p.m. If it was still running, she would shut the power off for the 2 units. As we grew older, her own kids opted to stay with their father for full-time custody, and she had them on weekends. Even they couldn't stand her when she was in charge and in the house. As time passed, she got them less and less, opting for alternating weekends as high school activities took precedence over time with mother. For my sister and I, the large 6-bedroom house was not ours for the taking. My mom had to pay rent as well as rent for 1 bedroom, as that was all she could afford on her salary. We had to share a bedroom until my 2nd year of high school. All the while, there was 1 spare unused bedroom available at all times. My aunt needed this for guests when they stayed over. Not 1 guest stayed there in the entire 10 years I was under that roof. Finally, the church we attended told my aunt to give up the spare bedroom so my sister can have her own room, as it was unhealthy for 2 teenagers to share a room together like that. That infuriated my aunt because someone told her what to do in her own household. My sister and I got the brunt of her wrath. As my mom's salary was tapped out, my sister and I had to do extra chores like mowing the lawn, trimming the shrubs, cleaning the pool, which we could no longer use without her being outside watching us. My aunt's behavior was becoming more and more outrageous and disconnected from society. For example, she had always snapped her fingers when she wanted to get someone's attention, but it was getting far more frequent, and she would blow up into a tirade if either my sister or I didn't obey. Her own kids tried repeatedly to tell her that the crap she was doing was wrong, but she wouldn't listen. Eventually, they wanted nothing to do with her outside of the home. She was a tyrant there, and repeated intervention to get her to see the folly of her ways would fall on deaf ears. I snapped. All through high school, I had no confidence as a person. I was weak-willed and growing ever distant from friends and society. I say this in all truthfulness and fear that had circumstances continued the way they had been going, I could very well have done something horrible. I was that bad off. I had just graduated high school and started my first semester of community college. I'm 2 weeks into my classes, attending from home, when my aunt drops a bomb on me. "You owe me money for this month's rent, the same amount for next month's rent as well. It is the 27th after all. You're an adult now. You're out of high school and working now, so you need to pay rent." The heck? I blew a gasket as I yelled back. "You can't just suddenly decide to charge me rent just because you feel like it. I need 30 days of notice. I have rights." My aunt yelled at me some BS excuse that she had discussed this with my mother, and it was decided that I needed to pay my own rent now. In some miraculous backbone move, of which I still have no idea how I stood up to her, I yelled right back at her. "If I'm an adult, then treat me like one, and talk to me about my rental agreements. I'll start paying you rent in 30 days starting the 1st. I turned my back to her and walked away with my fists balled tight. I was furious with anger, but I walked away. My aunt saw my fists from behind and screamed that I was going to attack her. No, I wasn't. She snapped her fingers at me repeatedly on my tail to get my attention, but I didn't turn around. I needed to cool off and clear my head. As I turned the corner, she grabbed my wrist, yelling, "I'm not finished talking to you." I threw my still balled up fist forward, keeping with my stride to break her grip as I hadn't stopped my momentum. This caused her grabbing arm to slam hard into the corner of the wall that I had just turned into. She screamed, but I left the house and took off. The aftermath of that incident was that my aunt called the cops on me in an attempt to press charges. She was taken to the hospital and suffered a fractured wrist, and she was put in a cast/sling. I don't know, as I never saw it and never inquired further. Her story changed every time she told the cops what happened, while my story was spot on every time. I can still recall that moment down to the smell in the house where I was facing, the working and non-working light bulbs, etc. Forever ingrained in me. I was kicked out of the house, and I couldn't visit my sister or my mom there at the house again. Fine by me, as I didn't want to see my jerk aunt ever again. I was happy to meet my mother and sister at the local diner or outlet. We could be ourselves there and not hostages in our own home. Years later, my mom wised up and got out of that horrible relationship with her sister and moved out on her own. She got a temporary nice place, invested wisely, and with the help from the church, got help getting a place of her own. In 2009, after the housing crisis, she bought her own place that she could never have afforded on her own prior to the market crash. But some good came out of it. She wept, knowing that my sister and her family and myself can come visit anytime and stay. Over the years, I've been able to forgive my aunt. Not forget, forgive. I've let go of a lot of my anger and hatred towards her that she put me through. But she has no leverage or control over us. She's a somewhat decent person for being a total jerk of a person. My cousins have calmed down, heard my side of what happened those years ago, and know what kind of a person I am compared to what kind of a person their mother is. They chose to believe me and know that I didn't hurt her like she continues to claim. The revenge. While I have been able to forgive my aunt for what she has done to me, I cannot forgive her for what she did to my mother. Kept her in financial hardship for a decade while she sat on a bank account full of cash and assets. Or what she did to my sister. Forced her to pay damages because the water heater burst while my aunt and mother were away one weekend, leaving my sister at home. She didn't discover the flooded room for hours. My aunt's reasoning, it was her responsibility to wash the house. Not the responsibility of the homeowner to maintain/replace the water heater before it goes. Let's leave that upfront $5,000 financial burden before the flood insurance kicks in on a 16-year-old. I've had little to no contact with my aunt since I was kicked out of the house nearly 2 decades ago, but I do keep in constant contact with my cousins. While I'm not going to divulge what I do for a living, I can say that I work with and for the government. I've worked my butt off getting to where I am today. I'm known for being truthful, wise, and giving good advice when needed. Because of this, I often talk financially with my cousins, all of whom are money smart and are doing well for themselves. They often then relay this information to their scheming mother, who has no mind for business and investments. All that money she got from her house sale, her divorce settlement, her previous investments is pretty much gone. I spent years planning on the perfect trap, and it took a long time to prepare everything to make sure everything appeared right. I am not a lawyer, and I don't pretend to know the law, but I do know the regulations and laws pertaining to insider information. This is not that. 100% certain of it, and if I ever go to court, I know my lawyer has a solid case in my defense. But is this a gray area? Most definitely. I let it slip to my cousins about some future real estate plans near my aunt's new area of living. It may be worth a lot more because of future development taking place in that area. All of that was true and backed up by what was in the newspaper and new construction signs that newly appeared on Google Maps at the time. The rest was fabricated by myself, backed up by actual information I looked up on real estate websites and on projects I was working on through my work. The telephone game takes place, and a few weeks later, I presume, my aunt starts making phone calls to real estate agents trying to buy lots of land in the undeveloped, crappy area of her new house. Over the course of a few months to a half a year, she spends $300,000 of her last remaining savings on land, hoping it will pay out when the area around it gets developed in the upcoming years. Only HUD/government/city doesn't have any plans to develop in those immediate areas. In fact, analysis showed that building in those areas was poor planning and would cost the taxpayers 2 to 3 times as much as the land was not environmentally sound. It was best to build 6 miles away. This post was long overdue because it's been over 2 years since my aunt purchased land that is basically worthless. See, she won't sell the land unless she gets at least the same price she paid for it because she's the owner of that land. Can't tell her what to do on her own land? Sweet. Karma strikes in a way I couldn't possibly have foreseen. My cousin informed me that the value of the land has decreased significantly because it's not environmentally sound to build anything commercial there, but it's zoned for commercial use. Currently, 3 out of the 4 blocks of land she purchased are just farms next to eyesore abandoned buildings or industrial complexes. Nobody can build on it, and nor does anyone want to buy it. Sucks to be her. Best part is, my cousins have absolutely no idea that I set them up for their mother to take the fall. These environmental results are relatively new and the perfect cover to say why the project changed locations 6 miles away. Have you ever had an aunt or an uncle be a jerk to you? If so, what were they doing? Please let us know.
I want to meet their aunt. She sounds like my kind of gal.
Teacher hates senior skip day and tries to ruin fun. Group of troublemakers obey her instructions. My dad and I were talking about our respective days in high school, and he shared how he and his buddies got back at their grouchy old math teacher, Mrs. Schaefer. According to Dad, Mrs. Schaefer was the best teacher he had ever had, and he and his buddies gave her endless grief, including using the phone in the classroom to pull a prank on another one of their pals. However, she took things way too seriously. She was stern, strict, and was the kind of person who could never take a joke. Everything had to be done exactly right. Of course, Dad and his buddies, being teenagers, saw her as someone who could use livening up and gained reputation as class clowns. He told me that Mrs. Schaefer probably thought he and his friends were going to be criminal masterminds or something. Every year at this high school, they'd have senior skip day, with every senior looking forward to because, hey, it's a day away from school. Mrs. Schaefer and her grouchiness detested senior skip day and decided to ruin everyone's fun during my dad's senior year. To this day, Dad swears that she picked that year because of the shenanigans he and his pals got into. She announced that there would be a test on this day. Not only that, but anyone who skipped the test because of senior skip day would get a 0, which would affect their grade average. Dad, who had a scholarship lined up at his dream school, was mad. If he missed the test, his grade average would be affected, risking his scholarship. However, he had been waiting every day for 4 years for senior skip day. So he and his buddies came up with a plan and give Mrs. Schaefer the most grief she had ever had in her entire life. Senior skip day rolls around. Dad and his buddies went to play golf early in the day as their test was scheduled in the afternoon. Once they finished their game, they hurried to the school, not even bothering to change out of their golfing clothes. However, this became a big problem, one Dad admitted he and his friends didn't think of. For those who don't know anything about golf shoes have little cleats, spikes, on the soles to help grip on rough terrain. However, wearing them and walking on tile floors is a bad idea. One of them was smart and took off his cleats, but the rest of them were stubborn and insisted on trying to get to Mrs. Schaefer's room in their cleats, which was on the second floor and on the other side of the building. They were slipping, sliding around, grabbing the walls, and laughing so hard. Everyone poked their heads out of the classrooms and were confused at the sight of these 4 guys trying to walk to the classroom in their golf cleats. Somehow, they managed to get down the hallway and up the stairs without breaking their necks and made it to Mrs. Schaefer's room. There was now a new problem. While the hallways had tiles, the classrooms themselves had wood floors, which resulted in the cleats getting stuck. They were clomping around, making a racket trying to get to their desks. Everyone else in the classroom looked up and laughed so hard. Everyone, that is, except Mrs. Schaefer. She was beet red and looking like she was going to drop dead of a heart attack at the sight of these 4 idiots, as my dad put it, clomping into the room, dressed for a round of golf and laughing as if they heard the best joke in the world. Mrs. Schaefer yelled,
What are you doing?
and pointed to the once perfect wooden floor, which now had holes in them. Dad, who had calmed down enough, shrugged his shoulders and said, We had time between rounds of golf to take the test, so here we are. Mrs. Schaefer, realizing that they did show up to take the test as she had told them, and that her own ploy to get back at them had backfired, calmly told them to take their seats and gave their test to them, glowering at them the whole time. When they were done, they clomped back out before slipping and sliding around to catch their next tea time. At least Mrs. Schaefer was fair. Dad passed the test and kept his scholarship. To this day, those holes are still in the wooden floors. Have you ever had a teacher who couldn't take a joke? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know.
They're lucky I wasn't the teacher.
A brief encounter with a Karen at the IKEA restaurant. So today, my husband took me shopping at IKEA for some random items we needed, but were unable to get due to previous public gathering restrictions. We decided to make a day out of it and grab some lunch at the IKEA restaurant while we're at it. Now, for clarification, due to what's going on, there's certain rules and procedures to be followed in IKEA, meaning that now you stand in queue, first to get your table number, then move forward to order and go take your designated seat, and one of the server wheels your food to you. All fine and dandy. We stand in line to get our table number, though the queue is kind of long and we're considering scrapping this idea and just go eat elsewhere. Right next to the window is a giant menu with items offered in the IKEA restaurant. The usual, meatballs, salmon, salads, and the like. In front of us stands a Karen with a kid in a stroller, which looked to be around 4. Karen stares at the menu and looks over at the restaurant employee handing out table numbers. Karen,
Do you have any chicken McNuggets?
silence. The employee is staring at her. We're staring at her. God and evolution are arguing in the background about whose fault this brain fart is, given that they are usually not served here at all. And the giant picture menu is quite clear on that subject. Not to mention that McNuggets are kind of a different restaurant chain's gig. Employee. No, we don't. I'm sorry. Karen.
You don't? What kind of a kid-unfriendly restaurant is this? My kid doesn't want to eat anything on your menu.
Employee. I'm sorry, madam. The menu you see to your left is all that is offered. Karen huffs, grabs the table number and moves forward. The employee glances over at us, gives us a table number and goes, "Oh, pardon me. Madam is pregnant. You don't wait. Please, just step here to the side and follow my colleague. He'll take you to the register so you can order." Karen head whips around so fast I thought it might fall off. Her face is a picture of shock at the unjust treatment. She glares at my 8-month pregnant belly, then at the employee and screeches,
I have a child as well.
The employee, now with another one on tow, stares at her blankly and goes, "Yes, but your madam here is pregnant." I can sense him struggling not to say, "Well, you pushed yours out a while ago, didn't you?" As we leave with the other server, I can still hear her in the background, arguing that she has a kid and should be given the same treatment as a pregnant woman, while the IKEA employee is still patiently trying to explain to her that it's company policy that disabled people and pregnant women have the right to cut queue, and unless she or her son is disabled or she herself is pregnant, she can't cut in. 20 minutes later, we're done with our food and we stand up to leave. I spot Karen still in queue, third in line from the register, glaring at us. I resist the urge to wave and just pat my belly happily, then waddle away with my husband. I have no doubts that IKEA is getting a bad review on Yelp or something due to not serving McNuggets and not letting her entitled self cut in line, even though she played the kid card fairly early on. Do you like going to IKEA, or can you not stand the place? Please let us know.
Oh, I love IKEA. I want you to get me a gift card soon, Mr. Reddit.
Entitled parent tries to claim my stuff for her kid. Backstory. Back in 2013, my stepsister, entitled mom, 30, had an accident and couldn't care for herself for a while, so her and her son, entitled kid, 10, came to live with us. I did not live at the house most of the time, so I offered them my bedroom so they would be more comfortable. The room had a TV and a PlayStation 3 that I had saved up for and bought with my own money, plus a variety of games I also bought. I had saved a long time for it and did not normally let my little cousins or others play it to avoid them breaking anything. There are a lot of other things that have happened, but this stands out to me. Over the course of Entitled Mom living with us in my old room, Entitled Kid has slowly decided to claim the items of my room as his. Things like old Nerf guns I had, electronics, and all sorts of other things I had in there. Most of the time, when Entitled Kid is using something I don't want him to, I go and ask him nicely to stop. This is immediately met with Entitled Mom intervening and allowing Entitled Kid to claim whatever item. Usually, I'm too exhausted to dispute it, and I know they will move out eventually, so I just let him have it for now. However, some items are worth fighting for. A while after they both moved in, we had a small family get-together, and one of my nephews came to stay the night to hang out with me and Entitled Kid, who was his cousin. Usually, when my nephews stayed over, I would let them play on the PS3 later in the evening when things have wound down, and this is what happened this evening. Since the PS3 was in Entitled Kid's room, my old room still, I let Entitled Kid and my nephew play in there without me bothering them. Soon, I heard my nephew getting upset, and since he is younger, plus Entitled Kid tends to bully him sometimes, I decided to peek and see what was happening. I watched for a short time and noticed that Entitled Kid was not allowing my nephew to play the PS3. This annoyed me for several reasons. 1. Entitled Kid has lived in that room for months now and only plays it when others are over because he hates sharing. If he actually wanted to play, he would do it on his own too. 2. My nephew does not have any consoles at home, so he does not have many opportunities to play. 3. He would only play single-player games I had when I had several two-player games they could play. Back to the first reason of him not wanting to share. I went in and told Entitled Kid to either give my nephew a turn to play or put in a two-player game. Entitled Kid relented after a bit and gave my nephew the controller. So I left after telling them to take turns. Then, while standing in the doorway, I hear a thud and look back. An entitled kid has ripped the controller out of nephew's hands. This upset me because of reason 2 above and what I had just asked them to do. So I go in and make him give nephew the controller back, and I sit down with them and joke with them a bit to lighten the mood. They are taking turns and all seems good as new. So I get up to leave again. Again, as soon as I'm out of the room, entitled kid rips the controller from nephew. Now I'm mad and tell him he needs to shut off the PS3 or leave the room so nephew can play in peace. Entitled kid refuses both and says he doesn't have to listen to me. So I walk over and shut off the PS3 for him and offer my nephew to come swimming with me instead. This is when entitled mom comes in. Entitled mom heard me basically tell her kid, no, which is fighting words for her. She rushes into the room and says I can't tell her son what to do, and he doesn't have to share the PS3 since it's his. She then tells me I need to leave her son's room and stop bothering him. I wheeled around and snapped at her and told her that everything in there is mine, that I bought with my money, and if I have to, I'll take the TV and the PS3 and set them up in my new room, which was the den, and my bed was the couch. And nephew and I will play while entitled kid won't be allowed to bother us. I also said that if I did that, I wouldn't bring them back and entitled kid would not be allowed to play it again while he lived there. She fought with me on this for several minutes until my dad, whose house we were in, had to step in. Once my dad stepped in and sided with me, but more assertively, entitled mom is forced to admit defeat and slinks away. Nephew is upset, so to make him feel better, we go night swimming and then had some ice cream, so he was still able to have a fun visit. Thanks for reading. Would you ever let an entitled sister-in-law and her brat stay with you? And if so, why? Or why not? Please let us know.
She was right. If her son was staying in that room, he gets to decide who plays the PS3.
You're a bad influence, so I'm gonna ruin your wedding. We've got evil mother-in-law, we've got fiance, and we've got me. Some history. Me and my fiance have been together since we were 13, and when we were kids, we made mistakes together. Note how I say that. We would mess around, make a mess, and all over be little butts. Now, I have bipolar depression, so my moods tend to go haywire, and at this time I was recently diagnosed and had absolutely no control along with the wrong medicine. So me and him got in a bit more trouble when we were 14. Now I will admit, sometimes it was my fault, and sometimes it was his fault, though mostly it was us combined. But to his mother, I was the bane of her existence. I was taking her son down the wrong path. I was a horrible human being, and me being around him would cause him to get mental and yada yada. You get the picture. When we were 16, we broke up because she forced him. I only found out about this recently, but apparently she threatened to kick him out if he didn't break up with me. When we were 18, we rekindled and started dating again. Now she had calmed down a bit, but was still psycho. On my 20th birthday, he proposed to me, and obviously I said yes. Now that everything is caught up, on to why I am posting this and why the title is as it is. Me and him are set to get married in the winter of next year. Her way of finding out we were engaged was her RSVP because we didn't tell her and waited to post it on Facebook till after she got that for fear she would try to do something. Once we posted on Facebook and let everyone know, she comments, "I do not approve." Okay, fine. We don't care. I posted a few pictures of failed wedding dresses on Facebook, and she commented,
Wow, you're fat. Why is my son marrying you? At fiance, call off the wedding.
On my post, like, jerk, I see that. Anyway, 2 days ago I posted how we picked a venue and are so excited, and then she commented and tagged her 3 sisters.
Let's go dress shopping.
With a picture of a bridal store. She's so unbelievably petty. I show my fiance all this, and he calls his mom and tells her off. She's on speaker. Entitled mom.
I should be allowed to wear what I want.
Fiance. No, mom. This is my wedding, and you can't wear white or a wedding dress.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's not like this will last. I know it will just be a party and nothing more.
Fiance. Mom, I'm marrying OP, and if you plan to come in white, you're not invited. Entitled mom.
You can't not invite me. You're my son, and I can wear whatever I want. Tell that jerk because I know she's behind this. She's forcing you, isn't she?
No, she's not forcing me. You're not coming now. Note, This isn't exact words since the convo was seriously long, but it's a summary of the convo. My fiance then hangs up and she tries calling again and again, spamming his phone with text messages. He's been ignoring her, and I'm hurt, and I don't know how to handle this. We are adults, but she still feels entitled to him in his life. I need help as well as needing to share her entitledness. Entitled kid tries to take sentimental toy. Entitled mom accuses me of attacking him. We've got entitled mom. We've got my mom. We've got friend. We've got friend's younger brother, and me. Some sad backstory for this. My grandpa passed when I was 3. When he was in the hospital, me and my parents used to see him every Sunday after church. Usually he'd give me sweets when we were there, but one day he gave me a little white toy F1 car, a race car for those who don't know what F1 is. He passed away not long after he gave me that toy. I didn't really understand or know what happened, being so young. All I noticed was we stopped going to the hospital after church. As I grew up a little, I realized that that toy car was the only thing I really had to remember him by. Sorry if this bit made you sad, but it's needed for the main part. When I was around 10 or 11, a new kid came into our Sunday school. We'll call him Friend, obviously not his real name, and he was about a year younger than me. Friend and I instantly bonded over our love of cars and our shared first name. Friend's mom is the entitled mom of our story. After a while, our moms decided to invite Friend round to my house one day after church. Entitled mom then insisted that Friend's siblings also be invited, which we said was fine. Friend has 3 younger brothers and 2 younger sisters. When they were about to leave our house, I saw Friend's younger brother, age 2 at the time, clutching a toy in his hands. It was the toy car my grandpa gave me. I instantly went over to him and took the toy from him. Being 2 years old, Friend's younger brother started crying when I took the toy. Entitled mom turns around and comes over to us.
What did you do to Friend's younger brother? Why is he crying?
Me. He tried to steal a toy from us, and I took it back. That's all. Entitled mom, looking at the toy in my hand.
You're too old for that now. Give it back to Friend's younger brother.
Me. Normally I would, but my grandpa gave me this toy before he passed away, and it's all I have to remember him. It's too sentimental to give away. Entitled mom.
You're too young to know what sentimental means. Give him that toy.
I said no. It's my toy. At this point, my mom comes over. My mom. Entitled mom, what's going on?
OP stole a toy from Friend's younger brother, and he's trying to claim it's his.
My mom looks concerned and looks at the toy in my hand. Is that Grandpa's toy car? I nod. My mom. I'm sorry, but this is OP's. His grandpa gave it to him in the hospital not long before he passed away. And since OP was 3 at the time, it's really the only thing he has to remember him by. Entitled mom went from frustration to pure anger.
Friend's young brother needs it more than OP. I'm a full-time single mother, so I can't afford to buy toys for all my children.
At this point, she had a brand new 9-seater minibus and smoked at least a pack of cigarettes a day. The irony, man. The irony. My mom. I'm sorry. I'm sure OP wouldn't mind giving you some of his old toys he doesn't play with anymore. I actually wouldn't have either. Entitled mom went from angry to WBC level angry, as in stupidly angry over nothing.
No! You are the rudest, most selfish people I've ever met. You probably broke his wrist when you took the toy from him, you selfish little jerk.
He had stopped crying by this point. If I had broken his wrist, he'd still be bawling. I didn't even touch him. I just took the toy from his hands. Entitled mom got her kids in the car. The older 2, Friend and his older sister, went with their heads in their hands and sped away. Me and my mother spent the rest of the day confused as to how someone can be so entitled. For the next few years, Friend still came along to Sunday school, and we still chatted. Entitled mom would always shoot me and my parents death glares whenever she saw us in church, and she'd always take her kids out of Sunday school as soon as the service ended. Sunday school often ran on 10 or so minutes after the service ended, so that I couldn't chat to Friend any more than she could help. They moved to the United States not long after Friend turned 13.
Hey Karen, can you read us our new review we just got on iTunes? Garrett M. says, great to fall asleep to, and great to enjoy during work.
Thanks, Garrett. We hope you continue to enjoy the Mr. Reddit podcast, available on Spotify and iTunes. The time an entitled mom tried to cover me in sauce. So, r/Ask Reddit has a thread about the tackiest thing you've ever seen at a wedding, and I was reminded of this fun incident from the 3 months I worked catering. Worst of all my food service jobs, by the way. Cast. We've got me. We've got entitled mom, entitled dad, entitled brat. We've got my boss. We've got the bride and the groom. So, campus catering rarely did weddings, and honestly, the food we made was so bad and so poorly handled, I'd think you'd want to avoid it. But the father of the groom was a big name on campus, so it was held on campus, and we had to cater it. I'm managing the entrees, serving up terrible chicken in a thick congealed sauce, and vegetarian pasta that's basically just a crappy pasta primavera with cheap, nasty oil on it. Seriously, I love me some primavera and wouldn't touch this garbage with a 10-foot pole. We're winding down. The last of the food is out. In a few minutes, we will put the main course away and set out the dessert course. Suddenly, entitled Brad appears. He's about 10, so he absolutely knows better than to do this. He decides that it's going to be the funniest thing in the entire world to yank the tablecloth away. Seriously, he was giggling the whole time, so I knew something was up. When I caught him with the edge of the tablecloth, I moved fast. Me. Kid, don't even think about it. It's going to end very badly. Entitled Brad giggles more and starts pulling. So I walk over, take the tablecloth out of his hand, and tell him to scram. I go back behind the table, smooth my apron, and continue my awful job. And that's when things went badly. Entitled Mom.
Why did you chase my baby? He wasn't doing anything wrong.
Me. Ma'am, your kid was about to pull the tablecloth down, and it's my job to stop him. If I don't, I could be fired. Yes, this happened to be a colleague.
We are paying for this wedding. Don't you know who I am?
That's when I realized this was the mother of the bride. Me. Ma'am, I understand, but there are and that was when she jumped across the table, grabbed my head, and tried to force my face into the tray of sauce for the chicken. A very hot tray, heated by a lit sterno underneath. I, of course, started hitting and screaming. The father of the groom came running over. Entitled Dad comes running over. The bride and groom come running. My boss comes running. Entitled Dad suddenly decides to try helping his wife try to shove my face into the sauce. I start clawing at him too, while the groom and his dad try to pry these people off me. The bride screams something like,
You promised! You promised!
I'm not entirely sure here. It was chaos. My boss is standing off to one side like a potato. All the while, entitled Brad is sitting off to the side, laughing like this is the funniest thing he's ever seen. In the end, the table went over and caught on fire from the sternos. A fire extinguisher was employed, and the wedding was basically ruined. My boss pulled me aside while I prepared to file a police report. Boss. You can't talk to the police. Me. Actually, I can. Boss. If you talk to the police, I'll fire you. Me. That's illegal. You can't do that. Boss. Your choice. I filed the police report and told them what my boss said. He didn't fire me. Entitled Mom and Entitled Dad pled guilty. The bride handed me a huge slice of cake because she was pretty sure my boss would steal my tips. He did. Speaking of sauce, what's your favorite sauce of all time? Please let us know.
I'm more of a Szechuan girl myself.
My entitled mom uses her birthday as an excuse to bully my nephew. My mother has always been an entitled little jerk, but plays it off as passive-aggressive for the most part. She talks to everyone like a good Christian grandma and talks to her kids like a Karen from heck. I always just brushed it off when I was younger and soldiered through with the thought of, when I'm 18, I'm moving so far away from you. Now I'm 29 and living 1,000 miles away from her, and life is sweet. The only thing that I regret about living this far away from her is that my 3 sisters and 2 nephews are all still down south with her. My oldest and youngest sister both live a few hours away from her, but the second youngest sister recently went through a divorce, and now she and her 2 boys live with my mom and stepdad. Because my sister works long hours at a small chain retail store, my parents are usually left babysitting my nephews. I have a few stories of my mom being entitled over the years, but this particular one happened just this past Thanksgiving. When I moved north, my mom asked that I make it home for Thanksgiving.
It's my birthday that week too, and it would mean so much to me if you could come down to see me.
Alright, yeah, that's somewhat doable. I didn't have much money after spending it all on the move, but I could scrape together enough to go visit for a few days. I drove down and spent 3 days with the family, with plans to drive back the day after my mom's birthday. The first day I was expecting my mom to be the one giddy and showering me in affection for coming to visit, but instead, it was my nephews. They're 6 and 3 and were over the moon happy to have someone other than grandparents to play with. My mom didn't even come to say hi to me, just waved over her shoulder at me as she walked into my stepdad's office and closed the door. My stepdad was already in there, and I could tell they were waiting for me to arrive so I could babysit and they could have some quiet time. I get that. I'm 100% okay with spending time with nephews because they're sweet boys and I love them. But what the heck? I'm here to visit you too, and you don't even bother greeting me or looking at me? That whole day was with my nephews and my younger sister. She drove down after me. We spent the whole day playing and watching movies and had a great time. I barely saw my mom the entire time. It wasn't until the boys were going to bed that my mom finally did come out to talk to me. But by this point, she was 3 or 4 drinks in and wearing her nightgown, ready to go to bed. She mumbled something along the lines of being happy to have me home, missed me so much, etc., etc. But by morning, she had no recollection of it and just made excuses for not speaking to me the whole day as she was just so tired from dealing with work and the boys and church all the time. I needed a break. Whatever. Day 2, she did talk to me. She barked at me to take my nephews outside while she shampooed the rugs and carpets of every room in the house. So I complied, and my nephews and I played outside for a long time. It wasn't hot, but the sun was out and bright. We were out there for a few hours, running around and goofing off. Eventually, the boys got hungry, and I was exhausted from chasing them around. So I opened the door to see if it was okay to come back in, and my mom immediately started barking at us to stay outside until the floors were clean. Okay, well, the boys and I are hungry, and I'm tired, so if we can't come in, then at least let me get my keys. I'll take them to get lunch in town. My mom immediately changed her tune. She didn't want us to leave the house without her on her birthday. It's her day. She wants to spend it with her babies, etc. So she said we could come in, but to stay out of their bedroom and playroom as those were fully carpeted and still wet. The boys, being 6 and 3, weren't listening and charged into the playroom to grab some toys to have a picnic with outside. My mom started fuming at me for it. The boys realized they got me in trouble, and the 6-year-old apologized while the 3-year-old shrugged it off. I told them it was okay, and we went and had our picnic on the front porch in the shade with their toys. Later that evening, my mom starts announcing that we need to get dressed and ready to go out, but hasn't told us where we're going. I asked her, and she replied absolutely giddy,
It's my birthday. We're going out to eat. I've been wanting to go to this Chinese buffet in town for ages.
I personally didn't care. I had been dieting for months leading up to my visit, and my mom's cooking, heavily saturated in grease and butter, had me feeling nauseous, so I wasn't planning on eating much of anything. I start to help the boys get ready, and the 6-year-old starts whining that he wants pizza, not Chinese. My mom starts snapping at him that it's
My birthday, not yours. You want pizza? Eat it on your birthday.
This has my nephew angry and not wanting to get ready, which his little brother now doesn't see the point in wearing shoes and a jacket if big brother isn't. I talk to the 6-year-old and tell him that there may be pizza there. Most Chinese buffets down south have pizza for the kids, and start listing all the other yummy foods they have, and he agrees to get ready, but isn't happy about it. I get them dressed. We all load into the car, and as we're driving there, the nephew starts asking me about the pizza again. My mom again snaps at him, this time telling him to stop fussing or whining.
You're ruining my birthday. If you want pizza, then we'll eat it on your birthday. But today is my day, and we're doing what I want.
Nephew says his birthday is months away. He's taking my mom's argument to think that he can't eat pizza for months. This makes him start to sob. My mom then snaps at me that it's my fault for getting his hopes up and that she has heard me lie to him about there being pizza at the restaurant. I then snap back at her that I said the word maybe and called her out for acting like a spoiled kid and talking down to a 6-year-old when she's nearly 10 times his age and refuses to act like it on her day. My mom got huffy and finally snapped. My stepdad tried to throw in his 2 cents, by saying we all need to calm down and that no one is right. That just got my mom mumbling to him about how her day is being ruined. I held my nephew's hand and whispered to both of them that if they didn't like the food at the restaurant, then we could stay up late and I'd make us a pizza to share when their mom came home from work. That got the older one to cheer up a little. But when we arrived at the restaurant, the older nephew didn't want to get out of the car. He was fighting tears, saying he was scared of my mom and that he didn't want to have her yell at him again. Knowing my mom would never let her Karen attitude slip in public, I told him that I would sit with him and his brother so he didn't have to sit by her. He agreed to come in after that. Each time the boys went to get food, I was the one to go with them. I was fine with this because, again, I was too nauseous to eat. My mom noticed I didn't have a plate of my own and asked why I wasn't eating. I told her I wasn't feeling well and didn't want to eat to risk further upset. She didn't respond. I took the younger nephew to the restroom after that, and when we came back, the older nephew was coming back from the buffet with an empty plate. I asked him if he wanted more food, and he just shook his head and fought back tears again. I asked if he was okay, and he told me that while I took his brother to the bathroom, my mom told him that it was his fault that I wasn't eating, that he and his brother were being such little piggies that I was too disgusted to eat. So he was getting another plate so that he could get me some food, and he wasn't going to eat any more of his. I was even more upset with my mom at this point, told my nephew that I was okay and that I was going to talk to my mom about this. We went back to the table together, and I told her to her face, just loud enough for a few others to hear, that it was her cooking that made me sick, that she coats everything in butter and cheese when I'm lactose intolerant, and she knows that I've been dieting to lose weight because I'm morbidly obese, and that after months of clean and healthy eating, one day with her food has me ready to vomit. But none of that is my nephew's fault, and there is no excuse on the planet for shaming a 6-year-old for eating. She turned her nose up at me and said she didn't know what I was talking about. Then she pretended that others didn't hear what I said when it was obvious that they did. I promised my nephew I'd get a plate of things with him and would only eat if he ate it with me. Me, him, and his brother all went to the dessert aisle and loaded that thing down with cakes and pudding. I snuck a few pieces of sushi to the side and ate those while the boys loaded up on the sweets. So my mom decided to make herself feel better by taking me to her favorite store and showing me around. We looked at a bunch of different things, and the boys were starting to get sluggish and tired. They had played all day without a nap, and their sugar rush from the dessert bar was causing them to crash fast. I rushed our trip through so we could get them home, but my mom kept nagging that she wanted to stop at other stores while they were still open. This caused her to eventually complain that the boys were clinging to me too much. I reluctantly agreed to go to Walmart after this. The plan was for my stepdad to stay in the car while the boys slept, but my stepdad changed his mind and wanted to check out the gardening section. And since I had to shop with my mom, then the boys did too. They crawled into the cart, and my mom and stepdad started to walk off with them. I went to the restroom, and then when I left, I couldn't find them, and my phone had died, so I couldn't call them. So I wound up waiting at the car for at least 30 minutes. When they came back, my parents seemed annoyed, and the boys were quiet, still looking sleepy. I loaded them into the car, and just a few minutes down the road, the older one started making a noise. I was sitting driver's side back seat. He was passenger side back seat. His little brother was between us. It was dark, so I couldn't quite see his face, but eventually I heard him sniffle as we passed under a street lamp, and I could see tears on his cheeks. I reached over to wipe one away and asked him what was wrong. He told me he was sad that I was leaving in the morning and that he didn't want me to go. He started begging for me to call my job and ask if I could stay for a few more days. This broke my heart. I couldn't even think of words to say. I felt tears in my eyes too. Before I could say or do anything, his little brother reached forward and wrapped his arms around mine and laid his head on me and softly said, "Please stay." Tears fell so hard at that point. I missed these boys so much, and the time spent with them was the best I had had in months. I didn't want to leave, but knew that I couldn't stay. Before I was able to respond, my mom starts in again, this time saying, "Stop your crying. Don't waste what little time she has left being upset. You're ruining it for everyone." My nephew cringed and tried to pull his hands away from mine. I just gripped his hands tighter and bit my tongue. I was so ready to scream at my mother, but didn't want to do that in front of the boys, especially since all she had done was tear them down and make them feel bad because of me. If I showed that I was angry and started to argue with my mom, then they'd think it was their fault too. I told my nephew that I want to stay, but explained that I have friends and responsibilities that I have to get back to, but promised to come back and visit as soon as I can and to call more often so we can play and talk more. The older nephew leaned on his brother, who continued to lean on me, and we remained like that the whole ride home. They fell asleep on my arm, and my arm fell asleep under them, but it was worth it. I didn't even speak to my mom for the remainder of my stay. She didn't seem bothered by it. I told my sister what all had happened while we were out to dinner and how disappointed I was that our mom had been acting like this to her precious grandbabies. My sister told me that our mom has actually done worse, that she doesn't have proof of it or she would have done something by now, but she believes our mom has been drinking when she's supposed to be watching the boys. They don't have bruises or marks from her, but my sister has seen a few red whelps that they won't tell her where they came from, but they look suspiciously like our stepdad's hand. I begged my sister to get the boys and get out, even offered to help them move up north with me. She said she didn't want to go that far north because she doesn't want to take the boys too far away from their father and his family, just because of our parents being jerks. She did tell me that our older sister was making arrangements for them to move in with her in the coming months. The sooner the better. It's now the end of June 2020, and my younger sister and her boys are finally moving in with our older sister. It's been hard for me to get in contact with my younger sister because of our insane work schedules and everything going on right now, but I've been keeping good to my word and chatting with my nephews often. They've gotten so spoiled with chatting with me on the phone that while I was typing this, they've called me 5 times. So thank you for reading this far. Have a great day. I have to go entertain kiddos now. Have you ever had a family member act like this towards you? And if so, what did you do about it? We would love to hear from you.
But it was her birthday. She did nothing wrong.
Crazy lady screamed at a cashier, so I screamed right back. I had just resigned from my extremely stressful retail job to pursue a career in real estate. I had been sworn at, threatened, and generally treated like crap because customer service. I had to go back to a store that was a different branch to the one I worked at, but still the same company. Some background information. In our country, electricity is prepaid, and in certain cases, a free voucher is issued in the first few days of the month along with your prepaid voucher if you are elderly or received government assistance. This is wholly issued by the government, and the cashiers have zero control over whether or not your free ticket will be issued. So I'm standing in line behind an elderly lady, and she asks the cashier for an electricity voucher. Cashier rings up the voucher, takes the cash, and gives the elderly lady her voucher. Elderly lady looks at the voucher and says,
"This isn't right. Where the heck is my free voucher?"
So by now, I'm steaming. I hate when cashiers are treated like dirt. Cashier explains to the lady that she doesn't control the electricity vouchers and advises the elderly lady to contact her local electricity department. This is 100% the correct answer, as per the company protocol. Old lady now screams at the cashier. Manager comes along and explains the same thing. They didn't control the vouchers and she needs to contact the electricity department. There's literally nothing else they can do. Cashier is in tears by now, and this lady is calling her all kinds of names. The poor kid is shaking. And then I realize that I no longer work there, so I don't need to appease this screaming banshee, and I do something I have never ever done before. I said, "The cashier has explained this to you. The manager has explained this to you. Now I'm going to explain it to you. These people can't help you. You're a sad, miserable jerk who doesn't You're a sad, miserable jerk who doesn't deserve the courtesy this nice girl has given you. Buzz off." The old lady literally couldn't believe someone else called her out on her bad behavior and left. She mumbled something about how she better not see me outside, and I laughed. I said she's welcome to do whatever she wants, but so am I. I'm not proud of how I spoke to this old lady, but no way will I stand by and watch someone being unjustly treated. By the time I finished my transaction, both the manager and cashier were smiling. I know they probably were very glad that someone could voice exactly what they were thinking. Have any of you ever called out a customer on their behavior? If so, how did they take it? Please let us know.
I dare you to call me out on my behavior?
No, you don't work here, lady. I've never been mistaken for an employee at a place I don't work at, but I did have to tell a Karen that she doesn't work at my store. I work at a 7-Eleven, and I've been there for about 6 years now. I used to work night shift. Boy, do I have some stories from those days. But one that really stands out for this subreddit is the time I had to tell a lady she doesn't work at my store. It was late one night, or perhaps early in the morning, and my cover had gone home for the night, so I was running the store by myself. I had an older woman come in with a younger woman, late 40s and early 20s, so I'm assuming mother and daughter. Mom just so happens to have that Karen vibe to her. She walks up to my counter while I'm taking care of some tasks. Karen,
Can I use your bathroom?
now we don't have a public bathroom at my store. We have a staff bathroom, but it's behind a locked door that needs a code to get in. Naturally, we aren't supposed to let customers use it. Me, sorry, we don't have a bathroom. Karen,
Well, where do you guys go to the bathroom then?
me, we have a staff bathroom, but it's for staff only.
Well, I'm staff, so you have to let me use your bathroom.
Me, I don't think you work here.
Yes, I do. I worked for 7-Eleven 20 years ago, so you have to let me use your bathroom.
Again, it's a bathroom for staff only. We'll make an exception for employees that left recently, but even if this lady is telling the truth, she left the company before I was even born. Me, I'm sorry, I can't let you use our bathroom.
Well, I want to speak to your manager.
It's about 3 in the morning right now, so our manager is asleep. I'm kinda losing my mind here, because this is my first interaction with a Karen in the wild. I'm still relatively new to the company too, so I can't think of any other option right now. Me, okay, I'll give her a call. I call my manager, and she's very not pleased. I explain the situation, and she tells me the best thing to do is ask her to leave. I head back out from the back, making sure to close the door behind me. No promised land for her. When I get back to the counter, she has that impatient Karen trademark look about her. Me, I called my manager, and she says you can't use our bathroom. Karen,
Yeah, right.
passive-aggressive eye roll. Me, my manager also said you have to leave.
Whatever. If I pee myself, it's all your fault.
Thankfully, she didn't rage a huge stink about it, but wow, I can't think of another time I've had to tell a customer that they don't work at my store. Usually if they do, they know the code already and can just walk into the back to talk to the boss. So that's my horror story from the days of endless night shift. I hope you enjoyed reading it a lot more than I enjoyed living it. Speaking of 7-Eleven, do you have a favorite convenience store to shop at? Please let us know.
Bucky's for the win.
An eventful end to my shift. This guy came in to return a lawnmower, except that he's clearly drunk, so drunk that he could barely walk. Me and a coworker went out to his car to help him unload it, and when he opened his trunk, an empty beer bottle fell out. The man had a bag full of them, so I'm surprised only one fell out. I went to help him move the lawnmower to a cart and caught a whiff of the alcohol on his breath. He reeked of it. My mask didn't protect me from it, unfortunately. After helping him, I told my team lead, then went and told the manager who was in charge at the time, and then I punched out because my shift was over. I stuck around though because I wanted to see what happened. Manager showed up and took over the guy's return. There were some issues. The computer said the mower had already been returned, and dude started getting agitated. I turned around for a second, and he up and disappeared while manager was trying to figure it out. As this was happening, some customers came to the service desk and told us that another guy on the other side of the store seemed lost, bewildered, and it appeared that he had went to the bathroom on himself. Now, I would have paid more attention to the second guy initially if not for the first guy reappearing, going to town on a leaf blower box trying to open it, wanting to test it out, I guess. He couldn't return the mower and instead bought a leaf blower and some wood. At one point, he was laying down on top of the wood on top of a cart. Manager headed over to deal with guy number 2. As he's heading to the other side of the store, I asked manager if he called the cops on drunk guy. He said he hadn't, as he wanted to see what the guy would do first. So I told him at some point, this guy was going to get back behind the wheel, something I wasn't comfortable with whatsoever, and he had left his dog in his car. Did I mention he left his dog in the car? That convinced my manager to call the police. As he headed over to see what was going on with the second guy, I headed back to see if drunk guy had left yet. He hadn't, and the cops showed up while he's still figuring out how to keep the wood on top of his truck. Cops talked to him for a bit, headed off to the other side of the store. Turned out, manager called the cops on both the drunk guy and bewildered guy. I went to tell the manager that the cops had arrived, and I asked him what was the deal with the second guy. Bewildered guy said he wanted to use the bathroom, but it was locked. It wasn't. He then refused to leave and straight up fell asleep / passed out in a chair. More cops showed up, an ambulance was called, and bewildered guy was taken to the hospital. The cops told drunk guy the second he decided to get in his car and drive, they'd arrest him. So what did he decide to do? Headed back into the store, returned the wood he had just bought, and bought something else instead. The parking lot had like 7 cop cars in it by this point, So drunk guy was clearly spooked, so he grabbed his dog and wandered off. At that point, I'd seen all I needed to see, so I went home 90 minutes after my shift ended. What's the craziest thing that's ever happened at your job? Please let us know. Mess with the marching band? March yourself home. I went to a very large secondary school, middle plus high school in the United States, with a population of over 4,000 students. Because of the school's size and excellent funding, the marching band had its own percussion equipment, wheeled carts, and golf carts to pull them, which were stored in cargo containers in the back parking lot by some classroom trailers. I was on the equipment crew for the marching band, and by the time my senior year rolled around, the containers were about 30 years old and one had started leaking. The band director, let's call him Mr. Connex, finally was able to get them replaced after begging the administration for several years. The new ones would be arriving on a Friday, and a different company would be hauling away the old ones on Wednesday of the next week. So for a few days, the old containers were going to be taking up a section of the parking lot. This wasn't a problem because the night before, after rehearsal, Mr. Connex had us measure out an extensively large section of the back parking lot and cone it off, so the crew would have plenty of room to work the next day. We filled up the band hall with all the equipment and had the containers empty so the crew could move them, put the new ones in their place with minimal effort the next day. This is the part I only heard about because I was in class when it happened. The assistant band director was running the band classes for the first part of the day, and Mr. Connex was outside making sure everything would be just so, when all of a sudden a lady drives up, narrowly threads the gap between two cones, and parks right in the middle of where the old containers are going to be stored until next week. Let's call her Mrs. Seacon. Mrs. Seacon had an important meeting with her daughter's guidance counselor. Mr. Connex walks over and politely informs her that she will need to park somewhere else because the forklift crew would be arriving soon, and in return she went off on him, complaining that because they had coned off so much of the back parking lot, the nearest parking was off campus and she'd need to walk about a quarter mile to get to the main building from there. Mr. Connex told her one more time that she was parked in the middle of the space that the workmen needed, and she told him in no uncertain terms to buzz off before heading around towards the front of the building. At this point, Mr. Connex called the principal, Dr. Intermodal, and informed him of the situation. Unfortunately, with the number of buildings on campus and how many guidance counselors there are in a school with over 4,000 students, it would take the better part of an hour to actually figure out where on the campus she had gone and which guidance counselor she was meeting. Our school had over 20. The school resource officer could probably write them a ticket, but that was about all he could do. Calling a tow truck would probably be faster, but even then, it would take about 30 minutes at least to get the car out of the way, and the work crew would be arriving in 10, and any delay would be an unexpected expense for the school. Then Mr. Connex had an idea. He ran it by Dr. Intermodal, and the principal ratified it, so he set his plan into motion. When the work crew arrived, several semi-trucks carrying the newer containers and a forklift, Mr. Connex gave them very specific instructions for how to arrange the old containers when they moved them out of the way for the other company to pick up. A perfect box around Mrs. Seacon's car, with barely enough room for a person to step through between the corners. Her SUV was going to spend hard time in car jail until Wednesday. Then the new containers were unloaded where the old ones had been and the work crew left. About an hour later was my band class period, and since being in marching band was a requirement for the symphonic band, everyone in the room was part of the band, so everyone got conscripted to move the equipment back out into the new containers. Some of us noticed the car in the middle of the old containers, but nobody had a chance to ask the director about it, until about halfway through the process when Mrs. Seacon returned and shouted these legendary words which I shall never forget until the day I die. "What the heck? Where is my car?" I can only imagine the sheer terror she felt upon rounding the corner and finding the place where she had parked her car replaced with a giant steel box. To this, Mr. Connex simply, calmly responded, "Exactly where I told you not to park it." At this point, literally everyone had stopped working, and the few of us who had noticed the trapped car surmised what had happened and were basically dying of laughter. Mrs. Seacon ran over to the containers and looked through the gap and screamed when she saw there was literally no way for her to get the car out. "You should fix this right now. You should fix this right now, she demanded, storming towards Mr. Connex. He simply shrugged and told her that the containers were getting towed away on Wednesday next week. She could easily retrieve her car then. This only seemed to make her more mad, and at this point, me and some of the other larger dudes moved between her and the band director because she looked about ready to bite his head off. At this point, the director essentially delivered the ultimatum that if she had no further business on school grounds, she should leave or he'd call the SRO, School Resource Officer, a police officer stationed at the school. Her response was something along the lines of, "Call him! Call him! Show him what you did to my car! That's a crime!" I don't know what crime she thought the band director committed, but long story short, the SRO arrived, laughed his butt off, then instructed her to leave school grounds and come back for her car on Wednesday. She screamed at him a bit about how she couldn't walk 4 miles home. Oh, poor you. And the SRO, after a few minutes, was done with her crap and told her if she didn't leave school grounds immediately, she'd be cited for trespassing, at which point she left. The cherry on top. Over the weekend, someone stole the wheels off the car. So even after the containers were moved, she couldn't get her car until one of those portable service companies came and put new wheels on it at some point Friday afternoon.
Huge shout out to Royalty 2018 who just left us a review on iTunes. It took me forever to find this and I'm super happy. This is the best thing to fall asleep to. Thanks, Mr. Reddit. Hearts.
Thanks, Royalty. We hope you continue to enjoy the Mr. Reddit podcast, available on Spotify and iTunes. So, Karen, what did you think of today's stories?
They were horrible.
Horrible? How dare you? These were some of the best we've ever read.
Oh, shut up, Mr. Reddit. It's ridiculous what people like myself have to go through. Dealing with stupid people like yourself and your subscribers.
Look, Karen, you can say whatever you want about me, but don't you talk about my re-army.
Re-army. Most of your viewers aren't even subscribed to your channel. 70% if I'm correct.
Well, I can't argue with that. That's true. Most of my viewers don't actually subscribe for some reason.
It's because you're stupid, Mr. Reddit.
No, I'm not. All right, guys, let's prove Karen wrong by making sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on notifications.
They're not going to listen to you.
And if you'd like me, or Karen,
what?
To record a special message for you, come visit me on Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.
Never!
And join as a channel member today, and Karen will give you a special shout out in the next video.
Like heck I will!